Started. I want to say welcome and thank you for being here today. And just to let you know that today's meeting is recorded so that we can make that available on our website. So let's start with some introductions. I'm Mary Martin, Chair of the RSU 16 Board.
Todd Sanders, Superintendent.
Stacy Field, Business Manager.
I'm Emily Rinchich. I'm a Poland representative for the school board.
Marianne Hawks, I'm with the Poland Select Board.
Lisa Chesney, Maya Board of Selectmen.
Paula Stotts, Mechanic Fall Board of Selectmen.
Jenny Rose, Adult Education.
Perfect.
Jess Madsen, Principal Elementary School.
Eric Anderson, Principal at the high school.
Sean Vincent, Principal at the middle school.
Caitlin Brown, Principal at Monty Consolidated School.
John Hawley, Operations Director.
Stuart Mason, Transportation Director.
Ellen Dorr, Food Service Director.
Linda Jason, Technology Director. Josephine Peter Scott, Director of Special Services.
Angela Swinson, Board for Minot.
Ike Downing, Board for Minot.
Josh Smith, School Board from Mechanic Falls.
Andrea Wynn, School Board, Mechanic Falls.
Amy Hediger, Assistant Superintendent.
So today is our first step in the RSU 16 Budget Committee process, but it does follow months of work and preparation by the RSU 16 administrative team who's here with us today. So I want to start by recognizing their work and their commitment to the students of RSU 16. So thank you. Now, the goal for the RSU 16 board and administration is for the school budget process to be both collaborative and transparent and to bring some different perspectives to the table. So that's of administrators, school board, and community. We're here today. So our common goal is to develop a proposed budget that meets the needs of our students while taking into consideration the challenges and the opportunities within our schools and communities. And as we work through this process today, we're going to ask you to kind of be thinking about that. Every year, I say it is no small task, but this year it doesn't even come close to describing the task that we kind of have before us. So kind of get my drift, and thank you again for being here. And many of the items that we're going to talk about today will be familiar to you as administrators and people that have been involved in this process before. And so some of the considerations that we will take into consideration are the same that we've had in the past, like the need to have a salary structure that allows us to retain and attract staff. Salary and benefits are the largest percentage of our budget. And again, you're going to hear about our aging elementary schools and our other facility needs. In the past year, through community representation on the task force, through the forums that we've held, through our emails, through public comments at board meetings, our communities have made it clear to us how important their elementary schools are. And also the importance for us to have a clear plan to address all of our facilities. So John's going to help us the understanding of that today. So, each year we also discuss our strong ties to state subsidy and the resulting issues when that subsidy is reduced. So this is a topic that we are going to address in detail today as the impact of those cuts is beyond challenging this year. Which that also kind of comes with the reminder that our town valuations are what kind of structures that subsidy. So as we see our town valuations increase, the state's message to us is that we can fund that more locally. And so you're going to see how that reduction in subsidy is directly related to this message from the state. And this is also at the same time that our ESSER funds are evaporating, and those dollars were used to fund needed positions. And when the COVID money leaves, those student needs remain. So all of this is kind of happening at the same time that we have less fund balance to put towards our budget. So unlike other years, everything this year seems to be a challenge. And you're going to see those challenges illustrated today in multiple ways, and it will become obvious that the lack of revenue is the most challenging thread in today's budget proposal. So as we work through the agenda, you're gonna hear the specifics around revenue and expenses, around the reductions and adjustments that have already been made, and those will be highlighted. You'll have every opportunity to ask questions and to engage in a discussion that will focus on what our next steps are. So it's kind of as we muddle through this doom and gloom, we're also going to take some time to recognize and celebrate the good things that are happening within RSU 16, that we are here doing good things for kids. And you're going to hear some of that today, and we have many things to be grateful for. So following today's meeting, this committee will also meet on the evening of April 24th to review, revise, and finalize a budget proposal to be presented to the school board on May 13th. And at that meeting, there will be opportunity for public comment. And then the board will approve a budget that was looked at the district budget meeting on May 21st and the validation vote on June 11th. So we have a huge task ahead of us. I'm confident that together we can develop a school budget that meets the needs of our students, but also takes into consideration the capacities of our community. So thank you again for your time and your commitment to this process and to our communities and our kids. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mary. Thank you. You covered pretty much
Well,
everything there.
What I said, you're going to hear over and
Oh,
over
you'll hear it
today.
over and over again.
Yes.
And I apologize, many of you have heard it over and over and over again. But it's a message that needs to be delivered, and it needs to be delivered clearly to people so they understand why we're in the situation that we're in. And it is a challenging situation that we find ourselves in. I want to start though first by sharing accolades. I thank you, the community members who have, I don't know if you volunteered or were recruited, but one way, shape or form, you are here with us, and we value your voice. So I thank you for taking a day, and 2 days as it's shared, to come in and spend your time with us, the board members who have given up their day as well to do this. This is as I said, it's a difficult process, but it's an important process. And if it's your first time doing it, obviously I'm new to the district, so I don't know the history of involvement in this. If it is your first one, you picked an interesting one for it to be your first one. I will share that with you. So I thank you all. I have to give thanks to the administrative team, and I know Mary already did that. The work that they've had to do this year through the budget process is I think, unlike any of the work they've ever had to do in previous budget processes here in this district. From the feedback I've received. I flat out from the beginning told them we have a form that they can fill out, and those of you who have done it before, they will come and present to you new position forms, requests for new positions. The first, I think, words out of my mouth when we started this process was, we won't be bringing any new positions to the board. So there are no new positions in this budget. Despite the fact, and you'll hear it at the end of our meeting, there are things we need. There are still things we need, but there are no new positions in this. Mary mentioned ESSER funds evaporating. The positions that are in ESSER funds do not reflect in the local budget. So we are losing staff. You may not see a reduction in the local budget, but there are positions in those ESSER funds that we do not bring into the local budget. So we are losing positions that were funded through that grant. And I went to some of the team members and told them they need to make cuts. And in some cases, they were very significant cuts monetarily, because when we started, and again, you'll see it as we go through the presentation, where we started at our budget isn't where we are now. And there were some significant alterations made just to get to where we are at this point. I think Mary also mentioned transparency. We've been trying to share the message, deliver the message as best we can. I've been to the select board meetings twice this year to deliver it, so that transparency is there. Thank you, JR, for coming and setting up the owl to record. I think it's recording. He walked me through it, so if it isn't, I will certainly put something together that covers what we did if it doesn't work, but I hope it does.
It says recording.
It does say recording. I did see that. And so again, I have to thank JR. And I went to parent groups just to share the message. So we are doing our best to get that message out. And I've heard that repeatedly, that people just need to hear the message. So those of you that are here can deliver that message. I know you've been doing a good job of doing that. People can reach out to us at any time, give us a call. Our goal coming out of this budget development process is to maintain the current programming that we have. We don't want to lose what we have. So that is our goal. Again, not to add, but to maintain. And secondly, and on an even playing field with that, is our infrastructure. And Mary mentioned our old schools. It's known that we have aging buildings, and we know that the funds necessary to maintain them at the level that they should have been for many, many years just hasn't been there. And it's understandable, because when you start looking at budget reductions and things of that nature, it's things that often get removed and not people. So it's not a surprise, and it's not a situation uncommon in other districts, that your buildings tend to just not get the attention that they perhaps need. So that is, the infrastructure is certainly something that's a focus in this budget. We have an agenda, you have it all. The goal is to stick to that agenda and be as close as we can with the times, knowing that discussions may occur, other things may come up, we may go off on some tangents. So we'll try to adhere to that agenda, but if we have to adjust it a little as we go through the process, that is fine. You have a SWOT analysis in front of you. This is something that Amy brought to the strategic planning team, and Mary's on that team, and Mary found it to be useful. So it was Mary's suggestion, when the three of us were meeting on Monday, to bring this to you all, to not the administrator, you don't have an administrator, it's the budget team. But what this will do is, as we go through the process today, it will help you identify some key points. There is more room on the back. You don't have to worry about the objective statements, although that would be good if you had some objective statements for us, but you can use that as for notes as well. As we go through, just what are the strengths? What are the things that we have? What are the things that we're doing well as people present? And I think you're going to hear that when our ad team speaks. What are the weaknesses? What could we be doing better? What are our opportunities for growth? And what are our threats? And there are descriptors on there. I'm not going to read them to you, but you can see what those are. So this is just a resource for you. It's not going to be collected. So if you don't do it, that's fine. But we thought it would be a great resource. Did you want to speak as to why?
No, I think the harder part sometimes of this day is when we've gone through all our presentation, and where do we go in terms of that discussion? How do we kind of narrow down what our next steps are? And so we thought this might be an opportunity for you as we go through the day, and you hear something, you think, oh, that's really a strength for us, that you jot that down. A weakness, if there, something that you think this is important enough that we need to put some exclamation marks on it, and we need to really address it. And as we talk about all those good things that are happening in our district, we really have a lot of opportunities to do things for our kids, for our communities. And when you see or you hear those, jot them down. And there are lots of threats. The threats in terms of what are our challenges, and that might be a long list, but we've got to figure out how to pull all those things together so that at the end of the today, if there are things that we need administration to address between what this meeting and our meeting on the 24th, administration needs to know that if there's a direction you want them to go. So we're hoping that as we each do it individually, that after lunch or later in the day when we have that collective time to say what are our next steps, that this will help us really identify what those next steps are.
Amy, do you want to talk about the SWOT analysis? You brought it. You covered it. Good.
Between you and Mary.
Nice job. So I'm going to kind of piggyback on what Mary just said as far as what are the outcomes? What is our objective when we leave this? And Mary hit on it. This group needs to come up with a recommendation that we can take to the RSU 16 school board. The objective or the goal of this group, and Mary mentioned direction, it's to provide us some fiscal guidance, not to determine to us what specifically that needs to go, this needs to go, that needs to go. That is something that would be brought back to the administrative team. But what direction do you need us to go? What would you, determined to be an appropriate budget, obviously, that you could recommend to the RSU 16 school board. At some point, we'll come down to making that decision. Probably not today. It'd be great if it was, but probably not today. And the concern was raised, it may have been at the Poland meeting that I went to, about the whole vote, that there was a vote, and sometimes people had concerns about the vote. So in our discussions as well on Monday, we talked about using a consensus approach, and it's called Fist to 5. I'm not going to get into the description of that right now, but it's a way to try to get everybody that they can at least get to a point where, yeah, I can accept this. I may not be 100% sold on it, but I understand it and I can support it. So I'll talk about that when we get later in the process. Little bit different approach this year, again, for those of you who may have watched it on video or been an active participant in it. Previously, the administrators would present to you. They would present their lines, they would explain the changes in their lines and things of that nature. Because they don't have asks for this year, or if they are asked, they're minimal, or they're necessary asks that we have to have, we took that off their plates. So I will be walking you through the lines of the budget as we go through each cost center when we get into the detailed budget. So that's something that they don't have to do. And I'll be honest with you, if they were doing it, they had like 5, 6, 7 things, maybe at the most. Some had none. So it's something that a practice that we don't have to do. I don't think it's a good use of their time at this point. But I do think it's important that you hear from them and you hear their voices and you get a feeling of their departments, their schools, and as Mary said, the good things that are going on in them. So at this time, we're slow on time of the agenda. What we're going to do, if you have your agenda, we're going to transition to the get to know our schools and departments. And Amy's going to kick that one off for us. So
advance the slide to the Jess, do you want to just talk about where to go to the bathroom? Like, where's the closest adult bathroom, right?
Yeah. If you go down this hallway, there are some student bathrooms, but in the very back, there is a staff bathroom. If you go all the way down the hallway headed towards the main office, after you get past the cubbies, they're like a little gray window divider. There's a staff bathroom right there on the left as well that anybody can use. So a couple in this hallway and a couple there.
All right, of course, we've got refreshments over there. Those will stay there for the duration of the morning, coffee, water, to make sure you're getting your needs met. Also, too, I know there's no like break on the agenda, but we're gonna look for a natural break to be able to say, hey, refill your coffee cups or waters or be able to go to the bathroom. But anyway, I think the agenda right now is the best part of the day, and I hope it's your best part of the day because we get to hear from all of our directors and our principals about what is going on in our schools. So you have that holistic view when you start thinking about making your feedback and your recommendations and trying to maybe move your perspective a little bit. It's important to be able to hear every single piece of the puzzle. And if you look at around the table and you look at the school staff, like this is like family, right? Like these are the people, we have the right people at the table to lead their departments or their buildings, and really good things are happening, and I don't want us to lose sight of those. So I get to kick things off. So either I'll be the only thing you remember or I'll be the first thing you forget. So we'll see how that goes. So last year we pulled together the task force, and I know you're all up to date on that piece, and we looked at how to reduce costs for our district. And we presented the 2-school elementary model and the three hometown elementary schools. And as you know, we remained with those 3 hometown elementary schools, and with those come the associated costs to fund each one of those with staffing and maintenance and operations and infrastructure and transportation and all of those components. And that's great. We have that settled, right? Like that's one of those things where we're not wondering where we should go with that. Out of those pieces have also now, as Mary talked about, is that revenue. And I really want that nugget to stick in your mind, is that the state is saying that our towns can pay more. And I look around and many of you are taxpayers in here. You go back to groups and you know people and you're like, wait a minute, maybe my house value has gone up, my land value has gone up, but the amount that my neighbors and my family are making on my street or that I know in these towns are not making more. So there's that balance of how are we going to fund our budget in order to fix and staff our schools. And you're going to hear some great things, but I just want to mention 3 things that really stood out to me during the task force work. Number one is our class sizes. In RSU 16, and I thank you for this, is we value small class sizes. Small class sizes beyond the optimal class size or beyond what is set in state law. Our class sizes are about 15 to 16 students per teacher. And that is wonderful. You hear teachers that have moved from districts that when they come and meet with the superintendent or myself for that final interview, you're like, why are you here? It's a list of things, and then you're starting to hear small class sizes. I don't want class sizes of 22 or 25. I want your small class sizes so I can give kids individual attention, because we know that school's a hard place now. The kids come with a variety of needs that are social, emotional, and academic. So they need to have that one-on-one or small group or more attention in order to get them to be progressing. So small class sizes, so keep that in mind. That's one of our values. The next one is our nursing staff. We have a nurse in every single building, and that is so important to be able to respond to the medical care needs of our students, and they are complex. That's not just going to get a Band-Aid or a bloody nose. There are medical plans out there, and our nurses are managing chronic illnesses. And if you look at last year, every day, there's about 16 to 20 visits to the school nurse. That does not include medications. So if a student is going to medications, that does not include that. 16 to 20 visits per nurse per day. And also too, just a side note to that, you're like, well, maybe that doesn't sound like a lot. But if you start thinking about 10 to 15 minutes per student, because you do also have to update the management system where we store all that information. So there is that time where you have to transfer that information into that management system. So it's a big job. And again, I thank our taxpayers for saying that we are indeed going to have a nurse in every single one of our buildings and recognizing the importance of that. And finally, our other key part is through our strategic planning team, as well as we've come out the pandemic and through where we are now, is responding to the social, emotional, or mental health needs of our students. We do have a school counselor in all of our buildings. Some of our buildings have two. It is from the national school counseling standards, say there should be a counselor of 1 to 250. And we have that met in our buildings in order to be able to provide those services. And that's critical. I know sometimes when we were in school, you just went to the school counselor, it was probably called the guidance counselor then, and you just kind of talked about, if you needed them, or maybe college, or what you're gonna do for work, or maybe they helped you fill out an application. That is not the role of a school counselor or social worker anymore. There's lots of teaching our second step curriculum to classrooms. There's the direct services where there's identifying issues and being able to help solve those. There's small group interventions. So that whole world of being able to get our kids ready to learn really does hinge on having those school counselors and social workers. And so that's another piece that I want you to remember going in, is that our towns have prioritized our students' social and emotional health, class size, and our nursing. So I will turn things over to Eric Anderson here, our PRHS principal. But if you're following along, there's an important document in your budget booklet, and there's page numbers on there, and it's page 7. So our principals are going to just kind of talk us through the buildings, but if you wanted to get a peek as to what the numbers look like, that's a great document to follow along on page 7 and on page 8 as all of our principals and directors step in next. So Eric, tag you're it.
Thanks, Amy. And that little bit of a drum roll is actually an interesting segue. I just came from a fascinating meeting this morning. I had a parent and student meeting to start the day this morning. And as we were meeting, the student had in her hands a sort of a cube about this size. And as we were talking, the student kept rolling the cube over. It was sort of a fidget device. And they kept rolling the cube over, so that at the beginning of the meeting, it was this very rhythmic sort of pattern as we were going. And then what happened is, as the meeting progressed and we got to some challenging topics, the student was rolling the cube faster, right? So that the pace began to get this much more animated. And it just struck me that it was a moment where so rarely when we're talking or meeting, we're reading body language and we're listening. but rarely do we have a soundtrack that's actually conveying what's happening in folks' heads. And so I think my hope for you all as you're going through this process is that you have a very rhythmic soundtrack to this, and you don't get to that very fast-paced place of these challenges. Todd and Amy asked me and asked all of us to just give you a quick glimpse into what's happening in our buildings this year. And for those of you who are on the school board and probably some of our community members and families as well, have heard me talk about the big thing at the high school this year for us is the NEASC process. And this is our accreditation process. NEASC is an acronym that stands for the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. And every 10 years, NEASC comes in and works with the faculty and the community to take a look at what's happening in the high school and asks for a whole bunch of evidence to be collected about how we're doing teaching and learning. And there's a process for identifying some growth opportunities and then to give some feedback on those. And so earlier in mid-March, our NEASC visiting committee of 5 educators from mostly in Maine, but also from out of state, came and visited us. And it was a terrific 2 days of talking with not just our teachers and staff, but also administrators and students and families as well. And they're still putting together the report from that visit, but they did share with me a very nice document of 25 points, and these are the accommodations, the things that they saw right off that are going really well at the high school. And so I'm not going to go through all 25 of these, but I just wanted to share a quick sample of 6 that just jumped out to me immediately, and really all 25 of them are really rich, wonderful things that they shared with us. So the first is they cited the strong relationships that exist between students and staff, promoting a culture of respect and intellectual risk-taking. The school's commitment to shared leadership that is a model of school leadership and inclusion of student voice. The school's commitment to reflection and growth. The multiple pathways for learners to demonstrate learning and mastery of standards. The use of the BAR program to ensure students who need additional support are identified with interventions put in place to support student growth. And then finally, the authentic learning opportunities available for all students, such as the sophomore exhibition and the senior celebration. And so these are just 6 of those 25 that they shared about the high school. And for me, just even these 6 are truly a reflection on the tremendous work of the faculty at the high school, but really are really accommodations for our entire district, pre-K through 12. The high school has the privilege of having the students at sort of the end of the journey, but really that place is only possible because of all the good work that's happening in those early years to get the students ready for their 9 through 12 experience. So quick look at the high school.
I'm Sean Vincent. I'm the principal at Whittier Middle School. Been there as a principal for 12 years and been in the district now for 20 years. And one of the things that I think is really interesting, if you turn to page 43 of the booklet that Amy was mentioning a few minutes ago, you don't have to, but if you'd like to kind of follow along, on page 43, the furthest right column has to do with enrollment counts. And if you look back, and this actually captures my 12 years, I think, at Whittier Middle School. You look back at the early years, we were in the 250s and 260s for student enrollment for many years. If you look at the last 3 years, 21, 22 at 291, last year at 281, and these are our October counts. This year at 274, we're actually currently in our building at 281 again this year. And that doesn't include, we have 2 students down at Poland Community School who are doing the functional life skills program, and another small group that are outplaced this year. So we're more like 285, 286 again this year, which is really interesting because if you look around at the populations of schools in our state at this point, numbers are actually going down in a lot of places. Where at Whittier Middle School, I don't know where they're coming from, but they keep showing up and enrolling, and so our numbers continue to go up. Last year, we were able to add one more teacher. She moved from a grant-funded position into our local budget. She's a writing teacher. But what that does for us is it helps, helps kids with their writing, but it also helps to kind of keep our numbers in our classrooms down a little bit. Amy talked about, it's great when we can get classrooms with 15 in them. We have 12 or 15 classes that are at 22, and that's my goal, is to try and keep 22 as the max. I have no problem with that. Teachers have no problem with that. It's a good number in middle school. I think we have some really nice sized classroom space, which allows for 22 to be a more comfortable number. As far as our school goal goes, we have some goals this year that we're working on as a staff. I bet you'll hear this from some of the other principals, but reducing chronic absenteeism is a huge issue in our school. A student is considered chronically absent when they miss more than 10% of the school days. Coming out of the pandemic, we were up at around 40% of our students were actually considered chronically absent. Our goal last year was to cut that in half down to 50%, or to cut that by 50%, get down to more like 20s. We got into the lower 20%. This year, we wanted to reduce that again by 50%, get down to 10%. We're still around 19% of our students who are chronically absent. So working hard, things that you do to work on those things. Yeah, you make the phone calls and the emails and the letters and the regular communication, but on the other end, how do we make class more engaging and make kids want to be there? And so we're working on those things as a staff, and building relationships that may draw those kids in on a more regular basis. We're also working on increasing the number of students who are meeting academic standards. Of course, that's tied to being in school. It certainly makes a big difference. And then improving our response to intervention system for those kids who are struggling. What are the go-to steps, and how do we monitor that and keep data to make sure that kids are moving in the right direction? Those are our goals. And I just want to point out 4 quick strengths that I note in our school. One is the outstanding teaching staff. I've been very fortunate to be in the same school for a number of years, and that staff's been there too. We have a very unusual year this year where we're hiring 3 teachers and a new special educator, and that's very rare. Usually it's 1 or 2, maybe, in a turnover year. And so we've been very consistent with our staff, and that makes a huge difference for our kids. We have a comfortable, well cared for building, and with a new addition that was just opened in 2020, that is a huge strength. There's a large variety of opportunities for students beyond school, whether it's sports, music, clubs, and activities. Some are offered during the day for those kids who can't get rides, and then others are offered after school. And then we have students who are regularly performing at or above the state average in state testing. And so a lot of pluses, really excited overall with how things are going. We're just trying to get better every day.
All right, I guess I'm up.
And now Jess Metz.
My name is Jess, I'm the principal at Elm Street School. Like Sean, I feel like we've been here a while. I've been in the district 17 years. This is my 6th year as the principal at Elm Street School. Elm Street School is a fabulous place. We have 235 students in grades pre-K through 6. And we serve primarily the students who live in Mechanic Falls. We do have some district special education programs. So we have the Applied Academics program here. So we do service students through that program from Poland and Minot as well. I have a fantastic team here. We have 16 classroom teachers, 4 special education teachers. We have multiple shared SPED staff, a speech teacher, PT, OT. For specialists, I share all of that with Elm Street School. That's the assistant principal doing morning announcements. I do share a lot of my specialists with Caitlin at Minot Consolidated School. We have phys ed, we have art, we have SEL, music, and we also share a GATE teacher as well. We do continue to share a school counselor due to lack of qualified candidates for school counselor applications. I'm a title school, so about 48% of my population lives at or below the poverty level here in Mechanic Falls, which means that we receive extra funding from the state. So those don't come from local lines. But with that funding, we're able to provide targeted literacy and math interventions. A few years ago, we applied for whole school titles. So that means that we can serve all students in pre-K through 6 through our intervention program. We also have 3 support staff that are funded completely through title funding, again, not from local lines. And then we do have some support staff that are part of that team that we do fund through our local lines as well. I have some outstanding special education support staff as part of our team. They work really, really hard to meet the needs of our students. We have about 24% of our population qualifies for an IEP here at Elm Street School as well. We talked about a nurse. We have the most amazing nurse on my team. Lauren Kamiri is fantastic. And we do have some pretty medically complex students that we serve within our school as well. We do have an ELL student. That's the first time we've had one in about 2 years. So kind of a shifting demographic a little bit there as well. But we are able to meet his needs through some consultation with an outside ELL coordinator. Our school goals this year, similar to Sean's, I think we all have been trying to focus on attendance as we kind of rebounded from COVID, and a little bit of the slide that happened there in terms of attendance. We also have goals around literacy and math. Our goals are really connected to our title application that we have to do every year. It just makes sense to make those our building goals, and also around improving behavior through our positive behavior and intervention supports program. We are on target right now to meet or exceed our goals that we set for ourselves last spring. Our agreed upon values as a staff, this is something we worked really hard last year to kind of talk about, like who we are and what our core values are. We hang them around the school. But as a staff, the things that we really wanted to make sure that we felt and all of our students in our community felt was supported and respected, safe, and that we were committed to building relationships and connections with our Mechanic Falls community. Some highlights, we had a fantastic summer program last year. We brought summer school back to Elm Street School, which was awesome. We used grant funds for that, so we applied, no cost to the district. We had 37 students and 10 staff that were paid throughout the summer with grant funds. This year we've applied again. We're hoping to serve 60 students, and we have 14 staff that are willing to participate in our summer program, which I think speaks to the dedication of the staff here to come back in the summer and spend time with our Wildcats, continuing to help them make progress as well. The other big things I would talk about is, with our community-based connections, we've really tried to work hard as a school and with our Wildcat Family Connection, which is our parent group, to have more of a presence in the community. So participating in our summer parade, a dunk tank this summer as well for Mechanic Falls Days. We've hosted movie nights, participated in the Christmas events as well, a winter story walk. They've hosted glow dances, title nights, getting healthy with our kitchen staff as well. We had a fire police safety day here, which is always a huge favorite for everybody. We had our annual career day. We had 25 individuals from within our community and outside the community come in and talk about their careers as well. We've continued to grow our relationship with the Ecology School, as well as Pick a Better Snack, and now with Androscoggin Valley Soil and Water Conservation District, which are all great programs, and lots of them are free, and they just come in and spend time with our kids. Our PD this year, Eric has talked a little bit about BAR, Building Assets, Reducing Risks is a program that we got grant funded for. Again, this year and then for next year, and a lot of the feedback from our coaches just talk about how everyone in this building is really committed to giving students what they need, working hard as a staff and a team to make sure that we're providing the supports and structures that our kids really need to be successful. So really proud of our school, really proud of the work that we do and what it means to our communities, and certainly appreciate the support from our communities with keeping our schools open and funded. So Elm Street Increments. All right, Caitlin.
I'm Caitlin Brown. I'm the principal at Minot Consolidated School. I have been in my role for, this is my 7th year, but I also have lived within the community for, I want to say 13 or 14 years. I'd have to do the math. And I am also lucky enough to have children at all 3 levels within our district. So it's nice to be able to see the full spectrum of what our schools offer. We were asked to share about our school goals, successes from this school year, and what some of our obstacles are, or continue to be. So that's where I'm going to focus my time. As far as our goals this year, like you've heard in a lot of the other presentations so far, I have 3 goals. The first one has been around decreasing chronic absenteeism. The second one has been around improving behaviors. And the third one has been around an academic goal around growth in math and reading. Some successes that we have seen this year related to those goals is if you were at Monday's meeting, you know that we've been working hard to implement BAR, so building assets and reducing risks. And BAR really does align really nicely with all 3 of those goals of attendance, behavior, and academics. So we've certainly worked hard to build a lot of structures and supports as far as BAR goes to be able to address all 3 of those areas. I think one of the successes that I'd really like to highlight is in the area of attendance. Like Sean, coming out of the pandemic, we were at about 40% chronic absenteeism, missing 10% or more of the school days. So that would be about 17 and a half days within the year, just as a reference point. Last year, we did start some of the work on trying to lower that number, and we were able to get ourselves to about 17% at the end of the year. Currently, we are at about 12%, with a goal of getting it to about 10% by the end of the year, which our leadership team, as we've been monitoring the data, still feel like that's really quite still within reach and possible. So we're excited about that. As far as our academic goal is concerned, we have seen some marked improvement in reading, but there still is some work that we're looking to do with math, as it's showing progress, but just at a slower rate. So certainly our leadership team has been working to think about ways to continue to build that and ways to support teachers in being able to support their students with that as well. As far as obstacles go, there still continue to be some resources that are needed as far as academic and SEL is concerned. In the past, we've had an outside counselor that has been able to service students within our school. That has not been a funded position here, but we've just allowed a space. That person has moved on, and if anybody has been trying to access any mental health resources in the state, you'll know that they're very limited currently, with quite a few wait lists. So we haven't been able to kind of fill that need. And of course, people continue, even when they look outside of what our school walls offer, to kind of have some wait lists to be able to fill those needs. And then, of course, some of our ESSER funds we have used to build up some of our academic supports and some of our SEL supports within the school that our classroom teachers are able to use. So we are still continuing to work towards that, but that is still does continue to be an obstacle. As far as attendance goes, I think one of the big obstacles that we're facing, and I won't speak for any of the other principals as well, is kind of the shift in mindset around school attendance. I think with the hybrid situation, I think a lot of our families might have gotten a mindset that it was kind of not much of an impact if kids were coming and going, but it really does impact students just staying in routines and continuing to have access to the academic instruction. So that's been one of the challenges. And then the other challenge is we still continue to see high levels of illness within our community. And so There are certainly situations where kids shouldn't be in school because they're infectious. And so when kids are sick, we obviously don't want them to be in and making other kids sick as well. But I think the combination of those two things still continue to be a challenge. And then one of the other ones that I wanted to talk about was I think one of the things that continues to be an obstacle is just the sheer size of what is expected of staff and association of what they have for time and resources and the needs of the students. So I would always want to be able to highlight that. And then finally, a big one would still be continue to be the concerns with the building, like the actual physical structure of the building, coupled with like kind of the stress that has come around those issues, especially over the last year. So those are some of the obstacles that we're hoping to continue to work on in the coming year. And Brandy, good morning. Your turn.
All right, I am not daunting. He's over there. Do take down your slide. You snooze, you lose. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm Brandy Como. I'm the principal at PCS. This is my second year as the principal, but I've been in the district since 1999. Same as Amy Hediger. So this year, our population is about 232. We're a pre-K to 6 school, and we house both FLS programs. Our goals, we've been working on reducing the number of office discipline referrals, which has gone down tremendously. I think some of that is the work. We had a behavior dean who helped implement a lot of programs. She helped us with interventions. So I think that helped our staff, received a lot of amazing trainings. We saw a big shift in mindset with staff with that, so that's been great. Let's see, we also have been with everybody else with attendance, so you'll hear that a lot. We are working on reducing chronic absenteeism, but we've also noticed since last year we have had a huge decrease in chronic absenteeism as well as students who are truant. We have title goals like Jess. Our situation is a little bit different where we are a targeted assistant school. We don't qualify as a whole school, so we have different rules that we have to abide by. We hired 3 great teachers this year, fresh out of school, but man, you would not know it. If you have been into our schools, you would see students who are engaged. They look like they've been teaching for years. It's amazing. And if you haven't been in, I would encourage you to come in. One of the great things that we are participating in is Math for Me. This is a 3-year grant where we have 9 staff members who were trained over the summer. They were trained in best mathematical practices, and the entire staff is now being trained in how to use math routines, and it's all about inclusion. So whether you're an FLS or you are a gifted math student, these routines can be used no matter what math program you use, and it just encourages mathematical exploration and mathematical conversations. So we're hoping that with this program, we're going to see an increase in our math scores. We have people from the state that come in and do 3 math visits a year. So they're assessing the PD that we're providing, as well as some of our mathematical practices. I think that's everything I have. I tried to keep it short and sweet. Yeah. Joe.
So I'm Joe, and I'm the Director of Special Services. This is my first year as director and my 10th year in the district. So special services includes special education, and really what it is we identify kids with disabilities. We decide what services they need for their lagging skills, and then we're responsible for providing them. We don't have a choice. If a student has a need, we need to meet it because, as you know, we're highly regulated. So this past year, our department had an audit through the state. So they look at our paperwork compliance, our compliance in providing services that we say we're going to provide. And then they look at our programs a little bit and so give us feedback. And that's really been guiding what we've done this year. What we learned from the audit is that we have great people, we have great programs. We are in school buildings that welcome our students. They're students first and then they're students with disabilities second. But our students are here and they have a great presence in all of the schools. And that's wonderful. That's one of our district strengths. And what we also learned is that like anyone, we need to grow and we need programs and updated training for things like reading and writing that are important. So that's one of the things we've been focusing on this year. Like Sean mentioned, transfer students coming in, those are always our unexpected surprises. So we do have students who are outplaced and those students have significant needs. And we say that, but I know that they're associated with a big cost. And that's something we think about. So very proud that we brought 2 students back from out of district placements into the middle school and high school this year. And that's a great cost savings until 2 students transfer in, which happened. And they were already in out of district placement. So we assume that responsibility as soon as they move into our community. So those are some of the unexpected challenges that we faced this year. Our students that we didn't anticipate. They also transfer into our buildings throughout the year. So we're always adjusting staff to meet the students' needs. And that's something that is a challenge, but also is part of being in special education and the joy that we have as we get to work with a lot of different students. I would say from the first year of being director, what I've learned is about the staff and their skills, and they're wonderful and the students are amazing. And I think the challenges we face are meeting their needs that we're required to meet, and seeing them as more than just students who require more because it's associated with their cost, but really looking at them as students who have needs. And if we provide them what they need, they will make progress and grow. And that's our responsibility. And it's wonderful to see the progress that kids make over the year and then years. So that's really, what I have to say about special services. If you guys ever have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I love talking about laws and kids and what we do. So happy to do that. And up next is Don King.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Don King. I have been in the district since 2005. I serve as the co-curricular director. Most people see me as an athletic director because I think athletics takes a majority of the time. There's a lot of emotion around that and a lot of exposure for our schools. But truthfully, I do work with co-curricular advisors as well, a majority of which are school personnel. So that makes it a little bit easier. They already have an educational philosophy behind them, and what we do in schools is very clear to them. Our athletic programs have grown across the country so that a lot of our high school coaches and middle school coaches are not actually teachers within our buildings. Ideally, we'd love to do that because we know that they come to us with an educational background. But I would argue that our coaches are teachers as well. I like to refer to our athletic programs as well as our co-curricular programs as the opportunity for education outside of the classroom. It is that, and there are plenty of learning opportunities for our kids. And you've all seen the t-shirts that our kids wear that say that baseball is life, or football is life, or football is a great game that teaches a lot. And I'm a big proponent of saying that I don't think that football teaches us a lot, and I don't think that baseball teaches us a lot. But I do believe that it provides an opportunity for us to teach the kids a lot. It's really our coaches and our staff and taking advantage of the learning opportunities that they have. So I do see a great value for the programs, whether they're athletic or arts related or even just clubs, for an opportunity for our kids to work with adults outside of the classroom. I would say that oftentimes, sometimes it's something simply a club that's fun to do that gives me a positive interaction with a school that doesn't involve me doing homework. Sometimes it gives me an opportunity to build a relationship with someone at school that can advocate for me. And for some kids, those programs are the reason they stay in school. And for some kids, they're life-changing. I really believe that. So educational athletics, we will need to take advantage of that. We offer a number of programs at the high school. I believe that we have a good number for the size of high school that we have. At the high school, we run 23 programs that include 33 teams throughout the year. And at the middle school, we run 13 programs that have 21 teams. The opportunities for kids to stay engaged, and we're having conversations with kids just yesterday about making sure they take care of business in the classroom so that they can be eligible to participate with us. So I would say that all of these programs provide a carrot to entice our kids to do what they're supposed to do. I can also tell you that our coaches are working with our kids around character assessment, and that's really important as well. So again, teachable moments, making the most of opportunities. And I think in order for us to do that, let's think about some of the challenges. Certainly, we've got behavioral challenges, and many of us would like to say that the behaviors of our students and parents have gotten worse since we've returned from COVID. I can tell you that in my 18 years, there were issues before COVID. They may have magnified some of them, but they continue to be an effort for us to try to curb and direct positive behavior for both kids and adults. Another challenge, I don't want to beat a drum, but I could spend a lot more money if you want to give me more money, right, John? So one of the challenges is trying to provide a top shelf program that our kids feel good about and our community feels good about. Unlimited purse strings. And I want to be responsible and ask for things that I need in our programs and not big desires. I think that I often ask the superintendent, is this the year that I ask for stadium seating all the way around the soccer field? And I get not this year. So, and I know that, but I do know that the kids require things, and they require things to feel good about their program. And so we work hard to do that. So funding is a challenge, but I also would say it's a highlight because we have a great opportunity to have partners in our community. Scott Siegel with the Poland Rec. I think that we want to develop those youth programs the best we can because that's why we're in this business, is for kids. And so Scott, we do the best to help them. And Scott works with us as well to help our coaches whenever he can. We also have found some local financial support from business partners. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, you know, all of our scoreboards on the, well, not anymore, but I used to be able to say that all of our scoreboards were original when the school opened, which means that they would be 25 years old. But the district helped replace the stadium scoreboard 3 years ago. And then last year, with great help from Poland Spring and Blue Triton Waters, they gave us the money to replace the softball scoreboard. So that's a great example of business partnerships. We also have, you know, one of the biggest conflicts I have with kids at games is the music that we play. I don't know if you've listened to what your kids listen to in their cars and with their friends, but it's not appropriate for our PA system often. And so we invested a little bit blindly in a company called Neptune Music. They have 38,000 songs in their library that are pre-screened for content and context. And so I had faith in some local businesses that came through and paid for that for us. It was about $1,200. So I think that that's a great example of what we have in our community willing to support our programs. Other challenges that we may have, I would say competing athletically in against well-established programs in our conference. But you know, we're always up for the fight, and we're going to battle. And I work closely with coaches. I'm really proud of them. Another challenge that we have, Stuart, can you plug your ears? Transportation. I would say Stuart has worked 25 hours a day to try to make sure that that works. And, you know, the challenges are getting drivers and whatnot. So it's not a criticism, it's a reality. The other challenge we have around transportation is, in order to have all these kids participating in activities, we need families that are willing to transport them back and forth. And there's been a strong cry at the high school to consider a late bus. But as I tell them, we're just trying to get kids to school every day. To have another driver on the road would be difficult, but in a good world, we hire 12 bus drivers this year and we can solve that problem. Good luck, Stuart. And then under some highlights, I would say it was a real highlight this fall to take our football team, evidence of the work we're trying to do with character and good effort, to take our football team to Lewiston High School and receive a sportsmanship award during the state championship game. That was a real highlight for me. Thea Thornton is a senior basketball player for us. She received the first ever Poland Regional High School Butler Award. It's an award given out in our conference to not only a top player, but also a top citizen in our conference. We've never had one, boys or girls, and she received that this year. So it's quite an honor. Other highlights, finding partnerships, as I've talked about already, and taking kids to leadership summits and doing some good work with them. So I will tell you that we're doing what we can, and I appreciate the support that you all have. There are no extra asks for us in the budget. We're just trying to do what we do, make sure we have baseballs. And, I will, if you see a new pitching machine out there or a new batting cage, it's because the team has gone out and fundraised for that and we have community support. So, thank you.
I'm Jenny Rose. I'm the Adult Education Director. I have been in the district in one capacity or another since 2000, and most recently, the last 13 years, I've been the Adult Education Director. Sitting here, I just kind of realized how adult education is really the culmination. And Amy has been so good at saying that they're all our kids from pre-K to adult education. And as I sit here and listen to chronic absenteeism, effects of the pandemic, just some of the social emotional things that are hitting our kids. As you know, in adult education, we have some of the most at-risk students, the most fragile students. We have students who need to better themselves for employment, for maybe upskilling their academics, for further education and training. So some of our programs and services, as you all know, we have a 4-day and 1 evening a week program. We have a teacher and a tutor who primarily focus on what I feel is our specialty, which is high school completion. We have two options for students to complete high school by building on previously earned credits to earn an adult education high school diploma, or to take the HiSET, which is formerly the GED. We have an advisor who works with our students to do self-exploration or to evaluate their different goals, different possible pathways that they might consider for their future. She supports them with applying to employment, college, training programs, and we've recently been able to access outside funding to support students to do fully paid and insured internships within our district. We have an administrative assistant who supports us in all of our day-to-day stuff. She does official testing for the HiSET students, and she also helps to organize all of those fun community and enrichment classes that we do for the community. The budget supports a director, and it also, we have a vacancy right now for a very part-time computer skills, business skills teacher. Our funding comes largely through state subsidy. We also get funding for the 16 to 20-year-old population of students that we serve, and we also the local share. We also access grants and like I said, these external funds that help us to support students. To put things in perspective, our budget is just under $300,000. And as usual, most of it goes 85% to support salaries and benefits for staff. While every year is different, sometimes we see a pendulum of a lot more older students who may need to get a diploma to keep their job or to get a better job. We are currently in the wake of the pandemic still. We have a lot of students who are still feeling the impacts in a school-age youth population. Of the 50 students that we have enrolled so far this year,
only 5 of them have been over the age of 22. So we really have a younger and needy population who require some more intense services and some longer services. They'll be with us longer. So I'm hoping that that's a bubble, because, you know, while it's good for funding, it's not what we want to happen. So I hope it's a bubble, but I don't see that going away with any immediacy. So I could go on about lots of other things, but that's my Reader's Digest condensed version.
I'm
Ellen,
Ellen, I'm the food service director for RSU 16. I've been here, I think, 8 years. I count backwards, I think John hired me. Good choice, John. You know, during COVID, we had to really make some changes.
Ellen, can you speak up?
Oh, I
please?
can.
Because that thing's running behind them and they probably can't hear you.
Okay. During COVID, we had to make some big changes in the food service department, and so did, you know, the government, the nation. We started a Healthy Meals for All program. Legislation went through for the state of Maine that all the meals were at no cost, you know, after COVID, you know, after a lot of the waivers ended that USDA put through. Which means the department's been very, very busy because a lot more kids are eating now because the stigma of free, reduced, paid have gone away because all kids can just go to the cafeteria and eat. Currently, including breakfast and lunch, we're approximately 6,000 meals up from last year, which, you know, is quite a bit considering I have the same amount of staff that we had, you know, before. They've been very busy. My funding comes from USDA state. You know, all the meals that I get reimbursed for and any monies that the a la carte program. That's where all my funding for, and Stacy and I work with my budget separately. But the downside to this legislation is that because all kids are getting fed at no cost, the free and reduced, the economic applications are just not coming in anymore. So that really hurts a lot of the different programs, Title I, you know, different things like that, because we just don't know the economic numbers. I think the state, USDA, they're working on different forms, but, you know, wheels turn slowly. We work very hard to try and get the free and reduced applications in, but people just don't see the necessity to send them in. You know, why do I want to give you my personal information when you're going to feed my kiddo anyway? That's kind of what we get. Recently, we've gotten a couple of new grants from Full Plates, Full Potentials, which we're trying to increase breakfast sales at the high school, middle school. We got a 3-door refrigeration cooler to put new items in. Cecile at the high school, middle school is feeding probably 100 kids more a day than she did before COVID. So high school kids are now actually eating breakfast, which is great because before she'd get maybe 20 kids, now she gets almost 80. So that's a great increase on kids who are actually getting something to eat before they go to class. And right now, I'm currently working on the summer feeding program, which is also affected by the fact that we don't have the free and reduced applications coming in, because in order for a site to be available, the area has to be 50% or more free or reduced, which is not happening nowadays. Luckily, I just told Amy we can do summer schools, so we can do summer school at Elm Street, at PCS, and at the high school, middle school, so we can feed those kiddos breakfast and lunch. I just have to look for a couple more open sites in the Mechanic Falls area. Maybe Jess can help me with that. I'm not from the area, so I don't know all the cool spots. But that's kind of what's happening in the food service department. We're busy feeding all those kids and making the meals and making them happy. And Linda.
Hey, everybody. I'm Linda Chasen, Tech Director, and I'm gonna just pass out this little sheet, which is sort of my by the numbers, which don't really fall into like the school by the numbers. So in the tech department, our job is to make sure that teachers and kids have access to working technology to complete their education. We take care of all the devices, the networks, pretty much anything that plugs in, people think is technology, so, we take care of a lot of that. This sheet pretty much just shows you a snapshot of how many kids and staff we're supporting. The IT department is a staff of 3, myself and 2 technicians. I hear COVID coming up during almost everybody's talk, and it's no different for us. When COVID hit, we went 1-to-1 with devices for students, and we have managed to stay that way thanks to our ESSER funds. We are reaching what we call in the tech world the ESSER hangover. So like it's running out, and now we have to figure out what we're gonna do about it. The good thing is it's put us in a good place. It's enabled us to get the devices we need in place for kids and just have a rotating 1 to 2 year grade level upgrade each year, so that it's like a minimum hit on the budget. Whereas during ESSER, we were outfitting, multiple grade levels. This kind of just shows you what we're supporting. We've got a lot of technology in the district, thanks to the support of the towns in the budget process. We have over 2,000 student devices, 335 teachers and ed techs. We have 56 desktop computers. We have point of sale. We have iPads in special locations, mainly in special ed, in the nurses' offices and in pre-K. They also use those in Driveline at each elementary school. We have 140 digital projectors, which were all purchased with ESSER funds. So that's going to be another one of those things where long-term, we will have to start cycling that replacement process with those. We have a printing contract, which is excellent. 74 printers around the district. They're all under contract. It's a really good contract. It takes care of all of our maintenance, toner, everything. So we do renew that year to year. Copiers are under that same contract. So we have 25 copiers around the district. And our wireless networks are all 5 years or younger. So we just went through a big process of replacing all the wireless networks, utilizing E-rate funds. So we're in very good shape there. This year we implemented a new help desk system. So we've had 500 support tickets since the start of the year. Average response time is 4.2 hours, which we're pretty proud of because there's only 3 of us. That doesn't include walk-in traffic. So we're trying to kind of figure out how we can include that, but that just kind of gives you a picture. The big thing that I've been focusing on this year is cybersecurity. So it's one of those things that keeps me up at night, making sure our networks, our data are protected in this very challenging world where it's coming out of everywhere. We did get a grant this year for a new product from Sophos. It's called Managed Detection and Response. And we have that installed on all of our computers. And what that helps us do is if something comes in on that device, we'll get notified so that we can respond to it quickly. That is the only new expense in the technology budget this year is to maintain that, because we really need it to protect everything that we do. We recently had a network assessment done. The federal government has an organization called CISA, and they are providing free network assessments for schools. And they do 5 passes of your network at different times. They don't tell you when they're doing them. And we just had our first pass last week, and I was thrilled with the results. They found only one, I guess they call it vulnerability. But the vulnerability that they found was very, very minor and easily fixed. So I'm pretty happy with that. And so we will continue with that monitoring. to keep an eye on everything. But the big focus is cybersecurity. I mean, in addition to making sure kids and teachers have what they need, cybersecurity. And we recently just completed an incident response plan too, so that if we have a cybersecurity event, we have a process in place for how we will direct it. Let's see, this is my 30th and final budget meeting. So I've been here since 1995, and I've lived in Poland for 43 years, so you know, I'm always keeping the taxpayer, you know, in mind, developing budgets. And, you know, I've been very appreciative of the support.
Stuart. I'm Stuart Mason, Director of Transportation. Close to 40 years ago, I started in transportation. SAD 44 in Bethel. Then I moved on to SAD 17, and then I moved on to MSA 52, and 3 years ago I landed here. And last July I accepted the job as director. And I've been graced with a great transportation staff, which includes 17 drivers, 1 newly hired, and 2 subs, and 4 monitors, and 4 student monitors, something we knew this year we started. And 6 van drivers, and one of Jessica's teachers drives one of them in the morning. And we have a new full-time mechanic and 1 20-hour mechanic. And starting Tuesday, I'll have a new intern, 17-year-old intern, wants to learn mechanics. I have 25 buses. The oldest bus in the fleet is 14 years old. And I have 7 vans, and the oldest one's 12 years old. And we have 15 outplaced students that we transport, and 6 homeless students that we transport. And by the time I get back to the office, them numbers could be different. From July 1st to today, the vans and buses combined traveled over 3,000 miles. My goals is to not have any robocalls and to have all my drivers and van drivers and monitor positions filled. And another goal would be to get some software to track the buses, students, fuel, mileage. And my successes this year are, I've saved thousands of dollars by using my mutual aid director friends and not contracting out trips. And I'm going to continue to do so. And I do believe we're the first ones to ever use student bus monitors and put them on the payroll. And I'm the only director I know of that does the state inspections on our own buses. And I brought the fleet up to 92%. from what I found it. I'm saying 92% is because 2 of the buses are currently out of commission because I don't have the funding to have them fixed right now. And the obstacles I have is I never have enough vans at times, and on occasions, I never have enough drivers along this. That's my biggest obstacle. And in closing, I would not have accomplished all I've done since July 1st with that, Todd, Amy, John, and Stacy's support. And that's all I have in that short and sweet.
Ms. Martin, I would like to thank you for fixing the catastrophes that were made out of our routes in Mechanic Falls by the prior director and making our children safe again.
I appreciate that. When I took over, I hit the ground running. Come this July, I'll be at warp speed.
But I really appreciate that you did that, because there were pre-Kers that were being put in vicarious positions they should not, their parents should not have had to have dealt with.
Thank you.
Well, in the interest of time, I probably should skip mine. For those who don't know me, I'm John Hawley, Director of Operations. Recently returned almost a year now after a 5-year hiatus. And when I got here, I was presented with what I don't like to call weaknesses, because sometimes weaknesses have a negative tone to them. But we had a lot of challenges. It's been a significant year despite all those challenges. And I can honestly say I'm very proud of the position that we're in now, as opposed to where we were 11 months ago. And it's because I have, it's not just because of my team, but people don't realize that we really truly have a phenomenal administration and staff here at RSU 16. And it truly takes the whole team to make this work. And none of us stand out above anybody else. We all are specialists in our own little ways. And, Stuart, what he's done in the transportation department from where we were, what most people don't know is we had 13 buses sidelined last summer that we couldn't even put on the road because they couldn't take an inspection sticker. We found that out in July, and he got those buses on the road by September, which is why we're out of money now, but we got it. So the operations department consists of myself, Stuart. I have 2 maintenance supervisors. I have a pre-K through 6 maintenance supervisor, and I have a 7th grade through 12th maintenance supervisor. We maintain 5 buildings that have grown in size starting from 1953 to 2020, all in various stages of their life expectancy. And we can talk more about that if anybody has some free time. We have central office building that we also have to maintain, and we lease 1 bus bay from the town of Poland, which is severely undersized and limits our abilities. Of course, our buildings are primarily used for education purposes, but what a lot of people don't realize is that there are a lot of outside agencies that also take advantage of our buildings. The local rec departments use them significantly. The Boys and the Girl Scouts, the Optimist Club, the parent-teacher organizations use our facilities, and even organizations outside of our communities like the Trek Across Maine and the Dempsey Challenge have also taken full advantage of our generosity here. We have 301,284 square feet of building space that we maintain. We maintain 88 acres of land. 6 of those are just roofs. So, when you're thinking about your home roof, think about ours. So like I said, I have myself, Stuart, 2 maintenance supervisors. We have 17 full-time custodians that maintain your buildings. 15 and a half of those positions are currently full. And just to leave you with some brief information, some statistics that might be of interest to you. The amount of electricity that the school district used in the last school year was 1,956,709 kilowatts. Keep that in mind, because when we talk about the electric budgets coming up this afternoon, a fraction of a cent of an increase greatly impacts that amount. We used 104,086 gallons of heating fuel district-wide and 3,807,604 gallons of water, all from public water sources. So I'm going to leave it there because you guys have heard me talk about the conditions of our buildings. We've talked about our strengths and weaknesses with the task force. Although, like I said, I'm very proud of what we've accomplished in a year. We still have a long way to go. What I have focused on in this last year was rebuilding relationships with our vendors and contractors, trying to rebuild some confidence in the operations department, with the administrators and the staff and the school principals, which, unless they're talking behind my back, I think we've done a pretty good job. And I'm going to leave it at that.
John, do you want to tell them who our newest bus trainee is?
No,
And a little bit about that process?
he left for more money.
Yeah. That's John. Yeah.
Thank you all. 5 minutes is not nearly enough time. I think if you could hear the enthusiasm as they were talking about the good things going on in their buildings departments, each one of them could have taken at least an hour. So when we sent out the email saying you have 3 to 5 minutes, I knew that was going to be a tall order, a task for them. But just an opportunity to get a glimpse into the good things that are going on. And sometimes when things are going well, it's under the surface, so you don't really get to see all the good stuff that's going on. So just to give them an opportunity for their voices to be heard, I appreciate them doing that in the last hour that we had. At this point, I've told them that they do not need to stay for the remainder of the meeting. So I'm gonna just take a couple-minute break here if you guys want to get up and head on back to your respective buildings or departments.
Thank you, everyone.
And if you guys want to slide down a little bit as they move on, you can spread out a little bit. And, one other thing I should mention, Linda shared that she was leaving. We're also losing Jenny, so we want to thank her for her time here.
Thank you, Linda. Thanks, Jenny.
You guys want to spread out a little more?
I've been up, so I
somehow your name got up. Oh, well, she's not here, she's in Germany.
Yeah,
that's why you encourage.
She walked in, I was like, I wonder if we're.
I typed it in
Thank you very much. Happy for you. I'll miss you. Thanks. Thank you. You got a printer? Thank you, Jenny. Yeah. I handed that off to John, so I have a question to him. I'm sure he has a question. I don't know where that stands. It was gonna be like a springtime, and since we had all the snow, I assumed they have it. I was like, schedule it. Hope so.
I had scheduled conflict, so I was able to come to the last couple meetings, but hopefully next month, I'll be back.
If not having enough buses is an issue or.
Just the open seat? Okay. Has he been on before?
Right.
I don't know if I know him.
On the hardware stores, yeah, they were.
Oh, gosh.
So the hardware store supposedly retired, but there are a lot of people waiting for you guys to go.
It's still around.
You need to be active.
I know. We need to share the work around.
He was on the budget committee.
Okay. That's good.
Great.
I want to give this back.
I'll put it right on the spot.
I'm about to
Never
say
happens.
things.
This place like totally cleared out. I can like breathe now. They're so, I hate being
I know,
all
we
like.
should spread out.
Well, I could not make it through this presentation, so I was like, I had too much coffee this morning, I'm sorry.
I'm wondering why they changed it to one of the school locations instead of the fire station, because that room is so much bigger.
Yeah.
That room is huge.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know, I don't remember. I think I remember vaguely them
This is the
talking
first
about
time,
it.
first time ever, and this is
Yeah.
what, 5 years?
I was hoping it was to
Yeah.
get people into the building to see the school with all the kids here and
Yeah.
how alive it is, but we're not doing like a tour or anything.
I know. Amy, why are we in this room and not Poland? That's what we were just talking about.
Fire.
Well, first of all, we have network issues there. Last year was a very stressful scramble to,
Set the computer going.
to connect to their network, to then not have it drop. So that was number one. And then the feedback of the perception of why we always leave it forward and we don't.
Oh.
Yes. So,
Okay, that makes sense.
yeah, so then we kind of just like, well, we'll just take that and go to our usual.
Do we have a room like this at the middle school? I can't picture other
No,
than the gym.
no, this is our district
And we
conference.
wouldn't be, okay,
Mr.
we wouldn't be able to
Sanders.
Yeah.
be in the gym because they're
Gym
using it.
is it, yeah.
I
knew there were reasons.
Oh, there's some up there, I see them, I see them. They're on the other
Is
table.
anyone else want? No, go for it.
Oh, they're good.
No. No, what's on my notes, my tablet.
These are giant
I was gonna say,
strawberries.
one of them's a meal.
These are like the size of my.
Wow, what a surprise!
Happens.
My kids are like, they always hold it up to their eyes. I'm like, yeah,
Very smart.
your eyes tiny.
Yeah, I mean, I see how we can.
Yeah, exactly, I think. Woo, that's going classy. There. Yeah, cool. Okay, good.
No problem.
And the one that I talked to said that if they went back to reading regular coffee. And the Constitution and social.
I would like to drink regular coffee, but I have to have like the hazelnut creamer. I'm lactose intolerant, so I can't do like milk and stuff, but.
Here's the creamer in the fridge, everybody, creamer in the fridge, so.
Okay, you don't have to, I won't fight you for it,
I
okay?
thought I had an idea.
Unless you want me throwing up during this.
No,
meeting.
no, we don't.
I'll take you home now, right? Yes.
No, I did very.
Like just drag me to the car.
Find my life.
Find the bathroom.
Yes, to go for a little bit of a walk. I know, where did she say it was? Just so I know. from
Maybe.
here.
we would like
Well, there's
naturally
one
all
right
scoot.
down the hallway here,
Oh,
like on the left. There is the
Yeah,
girls'
you must
room,
feel good.
but some people don't like to
Great
go in there because
but I
you're an
know
adult.
you're gonna have to spread out.
Oh, is there
so-
children in there?
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
there's
no,
an adult
no.
stall in there that's adult.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yes. But then if you want just the adult using the stall, that's by the office.
Okay, now I'm not.
Yeah, I know, I feel weird.
No, it's still going. Just give it
Left
going.
one thing, but yeah, roaming around, yeah.
Yeah.
You'll take a visitor.
Didn't expect to go through.
Oh, yeah.
You need it.
Well, there's exactly enough room for everybody. Not one more person to present it. Right.
Get everyone in?
Well, we spread right out, huh? Those girls, y'all snugged up over
Well, we knew it
there.
was gonna be tight, but they did a nice job.
Corner spot.
I was
I'll
gonna
give
move,
you
and I
one
was like,
more.
I don't know.
I like the corner, yeah.
Andrea, you want your this? Oh, yes, please. I'll trade you. Thank you. Did
you all get your emails from Patrick about being popular with the school that night?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I responded
felt
as soon as I
bad.
got to my truck.
Yeah, poor guy.
Sorry, Patrick.
I was like, what are the numbers in your phone?
Yeah, he said he did that though.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I texted him like, here's my number for next time.
Yeah, I felt so bad. I tried to keep it in my bag and not even think about my phone. I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, when I was leaving, he was up there with Schwartz.
Yes,
Oh.
The album's still recording this now. Don't say anything bad.
Okay.
Oh, he's muted during presentation.
Can't get training.
So cool. My youngest is pushing harder than me now.
My oldest just got reached.
Wow, I guess I haven't seen him in a while.
All right, I guess we'll jump back into it and I'll try to get us back on time. I'm gonna continue to go through at this point, we're to what we're calling the introduction to the budget process. This is, I'm gonna try to set the stage and then continue to go through some of the slides so they'll be projected up on there. I know Amy's done a nice job of putting links. I have to give Amy credit. She's created these slides. She's put them in.
Unmuted.
Thank you. She's put the slides together and put them in the packet for both the presentation here, the budget book that you have, and is giving you some very valuable links to be able to go deeper into the weeds as far as the stuff around the budget goes. So, moving on. Let's see. This is a chart. If you look up, I'm displaying it up on the bulletin on the wall here. This is a chart that's been circulating through all the groups from back when the task force was doing their work to the strategic planning team. And it's something we keep coming back to, and it's that balance. And when I started and opened up the discussions earlier, I said that we want to at least maintain, but we still need to move forward on that side of the scale, if you will, on the balancing beam. But we also know that we're in dire straits with our buildings and we need to fix them, because if you don't have quality environments for students to learn in and for teachers to teach in, then that's certainly not gonna occur. So that's something we have to be cognizant of as we go forward. This is a look over the budget timeline. I've shared this several times just to put it into perspective. Last year, the district approved, you can see on the far right corner there, a budget of $27.4 million. If you go back and you look over the previous 16 years, I think that's an important thing to look at, because over that time, the budget has increased $5,498,464. That's an average of just over $340,000 a year over the last 16 years. So the district has been very fiscally responsible through this process, through the budget development process. And I should say, I'm gonna pause for just a moment. Yes, we acknowledge the entire A team. I have to acknowledge the work above and beyond of Amy, of Stacy, and of John, as far as creating these budget documents and the numbers that we have, and they have an open door to step in and chat or add anything if I misspeak or if I leave something, if I omit something. So I think that's just important to look at and see that we have been pretty fiscally responsible. Why are we in the situation we're in? And I think you all are pretty much aware of why we're in where we are, but I'm going to go through and just share these quickly with you. The state subsidy that has been mentioned several times. Ellen mentioned the people not turning in their free and reduced lunch forms because they don't think they need to. What they need to know is that impacts them. It impacts them on their tax bill. So they really need to fill out those forms because that's utilized in the ED 279, which is the state funding formula. So quickly going through these, we had a decrease in state subsidy of $750,000. One of, if not the highest reductions in the state. We continue to reach out and find out why, I reached out to the Commissioner of Education, the Deputy Commissioner of Education, our state senators and representatives. They said they went back and double checked our numbers. So why did we get hit so hard? Well, there are several factors and they're up there, as you can see. Our property valuation in our three towns went up $140 million, $103 million in Poland alone. So as maybe Amy said, someone said earlier, the more the property, Mary, the more the property value goes up, the more the state perceives that as community's ability to pay for education. So that.
Question about that? What is like a typical increase?
It's tough to say what a typical increase is because, Stacy may know what it's been historically. I mean, I just see 300,000-400,000 from time to time.
Like 10,000, in maybe Poland and Mechanic Falls in mine at maybe 20.
Oh, you're talking valuations.
I'm talking about the valuation
Okay,
increase.
sorry.
Yeah.
Poland was like 48 million in the past. Now it's 103,550,000. It jumped significantly.
Yeah, the housing crisis. Yeah, I had no context for the numbers.
We saw it in my previous district during the pandemic because people were trying to get out of cities. So they were paying twice, 3 times asking prices.
What a lot of people don't realize is that the state mandates to the towns that they have to keep their evaluations at a certain rate. And if they get close to that rate or go below, then they get zapped as well. So with the influx of the out-of-staters when COVID hit, it drove property values through the roof, which pushed our percentiles down, which forced us to be at a point where we were required normally we're able to do what they call partial evaluations, and we could do a quarter of the town at a time. But because of where we fell, we were mandated to do a full town. And a lot of towns were put in that position. And of course, the last one that was done in our town was 10 years ago, 12 years ago.
you guys did one just
last.
We did a partial, a very partial, but the last full one was like
A
10 or
decade
12
ago,
years.
that's what I had heard.
Yeah, and that's what caused us to skyrocket.
Yep. And that is something that state doesn't take into account. The numbers go in. So you see the valuation increase in the local revenue. You can see the comparison from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 25. This is kind of what you were just talking about, that big spike of the 12 million to 15 million. Our economically disadvantaged numbers, those are the students that we were talking about with the free and reduced lunch forms, so we get those numbers. We have 11 fewer students in that area. Our enrollment has decreased. It's a 2-year average that we take, so it's 18 students, but overall our decrease in enrollment. And what that does is that changes those ratios again, so our class sizes get smaller, but we maintain our staffing, so you see those ratios change. We had 2 students who were tuitioning in last year. They are no longer tuitioning in, so there's another $23,000 that we lost. School revolving renovation funds. We put out 7 applications for school revolving renovation funds with a focus on the heating and ventilation in our 3 elementary schools. Of those submitted, we received 1 that the state recognized for the school revolving renovation fund. It was for a little over $110,000. It was not for HVAC, it was for ADA compliance at Myac. Obviously, something we have to do, that we'll talk, we may talk about that a little later. I think we're talking about the bond, so I won't step on Stacy's toes, she'll be chatting about that. But we do have, we are making attempts, and we will continue to make attempts to get school revolving renovation funds. The good thing, or the important thing to remember about the school revolving renovation funds is, on average, the state absorbs 60% of the cost, and the district assumes 40%. So that's 60% that we don't have to pay back. There's a window of time you have to get the work done in, and there's a window of time that you have to pay the amount for a payback. The last one, and I was listening to the budget presentation last year, and I know Ken referenced it. You really want your carry forward amount to be between $600,000-$700,000. That's about the number you want it to be at. Last year, $1.5 million was the carry forward amount. What that does is creates a cliff. You can't maintain it. We don't have it. So it's not a matter of why isn't Todd asked Stacy to put the 1.5 million back in? It's not there to put in. And we did come back up to $1 million. We had it down to around 700,000, but it just, the numbers were so high. So we did reduce 500,000 from the carry forward fund, which if you look at just the top line and you look at the bottom line, that put us, $1.2 million behind the starting line. So we were already, there hadn't been any increases, we were already looking at 1.2 million. The fund fixed staff our schools, the contractual salary, someone mentioned it earlier, I think it was Jenny mentioned earlier, the significant amount of a budget that is consumed by contractual and salaries and benefits and retirement and things of that nature. So you see the number there. We budgeted 10%, I think it was, for Anthem. We were really hoping that we would come in because every percent that you budget is about $35,000, I think we said. So we were hoping we'd come in well below the 10%. We came in at 9.9%. So it was a savings of $3,000, I think is what we ended up saving. So that we just got that number recently. And as we said, the salaries and contracts consume 85 to 88-ish% of the overall budget. The capital improvement plan, we did improve that by 400K to a total of 600K. It was at 200. So we've increased that amount, but when John speaks later, you will hear that it's not nearly enough. If he was to do everything that he needs to do next year to get our buildings up to where they are healthy and safe, he'd be at about a $2 million price tag. So this is a commitment that we will have to make for multiple years, the 600,000. It can't be just, we get 600,000 this year, next year we'll back it back down to 200,000 or 300,000. It's gonna have to be a commitment of at least that amount moving forward. You see the budget request there, and it's highlighted in yellow font. So our budget request this year is for the $29,329,077. That is an increase of $1,930,613 from last year. Apologize, I got to keep looking around the aisle, which reflects a 7.05% increase to the taxpayers. If you to compare that with fiscal year 24 from fiscal year 23, last year I'm talking now, the budget was $27,584,272, which reflected an increase of $1,697,886. So you can see the increase. We're not that far off from the increase of the previous fiscal year. That percentage at the time would have been 6.56%. So the increase from year to year is not, I would say that's significant, but where it gets significant is when you take in that 1.2 million of money that we don't have. Just to show you, I mentioned earlier that we had worked hard to the A-team. I have to give the A-team credit again, Amy, Stacy, and John for their work. When we started this process back in February, we were sitting at a budget request of almost $30 million. Which would have been a 9.31% increase. We knew that that was something that we couldn't bring forward, despite the need. So you can see that over the period of time, we've worked our way back to our current budget request, which I've already shared with you the amount. You can see it up there.
Now, does that include the $10 million for the
Oh, we'll talk about that. HVAC is not included in this budget. This is also a time to, how we get to these numbers, how did we determine what we needed to put into our budget? We have to thank the task force for all the hard work they did. We have to thank the strategic planning team for their ongoing work, their meetings to give us a roadmap of where we're gonna head. And the things we have to keep in mind as we go through this process is supporting our education, supporting and learning of our students, our fiscal management with transparency, which we have tried extremely hard to do. The support for our infrastructure and facilities, which is essential, and the fiscal responsibility as we develop our budget. This is your question, Paul, that you were just referring to. The board, after getting all that information that I shared and after making the decision based on all that good information that those groups provided for them, made the decision to maintain 3 elementary schools. This was all about that bond discussion that you had yet last year during this process of trying to get the schools up with the heating and ventilation only. So this year, as we were going through the process, we also researched a home equity loan, quote there, but a master lease purchase agreement. And as you compare the two, the benefits of the master lease purchase agreement were significant compared to a bond. The one challenge, I guess, for lack of a better word, of the master lease versus the bond is it doesn't go out to voters. So it could very easily be perceived that it was a way to circumvent the voters. That was not the case. And for the reasons that are up there on the board, that is why the board opted to go this way, but I'll go through them very quickly for people to make reference to it so that they have a better understanding of how it works. It's like a home equity loan. I think it was Mary that made that reference. It has to be focused on energy projects. You can only access the amount of money determined for that HVAC project. So that's one of the big differences. You identify a project and you access the amount of money out of that 10.2 that you need for that project. And you only pay interest on that amount. So you're not paying, like a bond, you're paying interest on the entire amount for the duration of the bond, and the rates are set. For this, the interest that you're paying is only on what you've taken out for those projects. And you could identify, let's say the first project would be Minot Consolidated School, and that would be summer of 25. So we would only access the money needed for that project. The interest rates are determined by the current rate at that time. So that is a difference in the bond and the lease purchase agreement.
Is there a dead end on the other end? You have to utilize or access this money by no later than date? Or is it an unending thing that we might be able to do one school and get it like half paid off before we access it for the next school?
Well, you're locked into the rates at the time. Chime in if I'm speaking. Or go ahead and take it over.
So each project that you do is separate. It has its own repayment schedule. So if the first project is Minot and it's $5 million, you borrow the $5 million. That would be for 15 years, 10 years, whatever you decide at the time. Then you move to Elm Street School and you say that's $2 million. That has nothing to do with that first repayment schedule. You have a brand new repayment schedule for only that amount of money. So it's staggered. Okay. So at some point in time, yes, you're gonna have 3 repayment schedules that may equal 10. Todd's last bullet down there talks about only borrowing what we need. If we get to the end and we have some HVAC stuff come in that's less than that, we don't have to take all that money. With a bond, we have to take the full amount that you applied for from the bond bank. This, if the end, we only needed $8 million, that's all we have to borrow.
But do they set a must use or lose by date on it? Okay.
That, the school revolving renovation funds does have that. You have to do the project within a year. And then you have to pay it off within 5. Along the same lines of the school revolving renovation funds, we will continue to keep applying for those. We reached out to a neighboring district who got a significant amount of money. We got copies of their applications so we could compare them. So what we will do is we will continue to apply for that. If we get $2 million for an HVAC project next year, that's $2 million we take off from this.
Which I understand, but I do know that with some home equity loans, they're only, when you initially apply and get approved, some banks only say, well, you have this, but it's only for 10 years. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, and the one difference is, say we need 12 million at the end instead of 2 million, 10 million. At that point, you do have to do another application, they look at your credit again. So there is additional work to be done to access additional money than what you originally asked for.
And then the bottom bullet there that's in orange is what you were asking also, Paula, earlier. This is not included in the fiscal year budget for 25. It is a separate pool of money. Anything that John speaks about this afternoon as far as operations and building improvements is something separate from HVAC. It would be other things, because he mentioned roofs, we have paving, we have a bunch of structural things that need to take place. He's been an awesome return to us, and as he said, he's accomplished miracles this year. But there's so much more work to do, and he was all over it.
I'm the chair of the operations committee for the school board, and I just wanna add, we've spent a ton of time on this. And for me, one of the most important things to keep in mind about the purchase lease versus the other funding options is the flexibility that it gives us, because we're constantly identifying and looking for other sources of money to make the improvements and buy the equipment that we need, so that if we can win a grant from, there's a new Biden administration school infrastructure fund that's opening soon. There's the new season of new school buildings projects that's opening this summer. We've been exploring options with the USDA. They have grants and loans available for school districts for projects like what we have. So with this, we have the flexibility that if we're able to get money from somewhere else, then we can reduce the amount that we're borrowing through this agreement, where the bond would not give us that.
Yeah, the bond is the bond, and you're
Yeah.
stuck with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I apologize ahead of time. I'm new at this game,
No,
and
no.
I'm trying to play catch up.
No, please, it's good questions.
Is the 10.2 million up to number, is that including interest or is interest above and beyond?
Yes, that's interest, that's what the numbers that we got, I would say more accurate numbers than previously, and the calculated interest, so that is the max.
My question is, so it says no cost in the 25 budget, it starts, so you're saying work isn't even gonna start until we start paying for that? Because there's a huge urgency to get this stuff done, and now we're delaying this.
The soonest we can start will be the summer of 25, so we're gonna have to make it through another winter.
To that end, why wouldn't we maybe take a little bit more in the CIP budget to start some of this stuff sooner? Instead of relying on that.
Yeah, all the big projects need to be rebid. Our bids are too old now, so we need to redo. We're gonna finish the drawings, get organized on the other two schools. The Minot School, we're ready. We just need to rebid that. So we just at our recent meeting, we identified that this is the way that we're gonna plan to pay for it. So now we're ready. We've met with EMC and they're gonna go ahead and get new quotes so that we have new numbers and we can go ahead and propose a project for the purchase lease, get that set up and start sending those invoices in. But in order to get good, big contractors to do a complex project like ours, we need to book them in advance. So the big companies that have the skill set that we need for a project like the Minot School, they're not available for this summer. It is disappointing to all of us because we would like this done yesterday, but next summer will be our first opportunity where the structure of the building really needs to be opened up and it's not able to be done with the kids in the building.
Understood that. I guess I disagree with, so we opening up to just this one company again and not a full open bid to other?
No, it's open bid.
It will be open bid?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know from Minot folks, that's been a huge concern, even my own, that I know I voiced at the meeting, that you know, whoever you guys have been working with, I personally feel very uncomfortable with, because he seems like a mediator, right? He doesn't have people, he's contracting out and we're paying him a huge amount of money. I'd rather have local businesses who have staff, or maybe able to even hire more staff for those local businesses to be at your beck and call when you need them right away.
Yep.
And just for clarity, we haven't paid them a huge amount of money. We've paid, what was it, 25,000 or something?
Well, we paid him 25 and he had to pay to somebody else.
Yeah, he paid 28,000 to someone else. They have over six figures of work done into our projects, and we haven't paid them. So the final amount that they will get, I think he said was 10% of the overall project.
But that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, but it's also a lot of work.
Understood, but again, go
Can
ahead.
I just say something? Because I share your concerns, but that's something that I've really dug into, like, on the task force and then going forward, like, if you go back and listen, like, this is a question I've asked multiple times about local contractors. The issue is that it's such a large, complex project. You have to have a project management company. You can't have like an electrician and a plumber and a heating guy all separately working on something like this, because it would just be chaos and mistakes would be made. So you have to have that. Every school district around us is using a company like EMC or similar to manage these projects. It can't be managed by like
Like a
John
general
or-
contractor.
Yeah.
And it still goes out to public bid. The problem with this last year is that companies weren't able to do it. Like, we went locally, but they can't. They're too small to handle the job because the time frame it needs to be completed in, you need a massive amount of people because you're wiping it all out. You have a very short frame because it's not something you could piecemeal out, because the majority of the work is literally in the ceilings of the buildings, so.
And just so you know, we did go out to an RFQ this year, after consultation with John. I think it was the three of us. We did an RFQ, we did have 3 other oversight companies come in and interview them, and we felt that EMC was the best.
So like local fair that does HVAC, you guys have heard from that?
Bids we put out, John did have someone come in who had expressed interest, did a walkthrough with them, and they said the project was too big. They couldn't get it done. They didn't have the staff to do it. But it will be open again for the local contractors to apply. I'm gonna skip through this because this is when Stacy's gonna talk in just a few minutes, so there's some slides I'm gonna skip through, then come back to. Pause right there. Oh, then I'll stop right there. Thank you, Amy. As I said, she put them together. So at this point, I'm gonna stop talking. You need to project you.
Well, if they have their packets, is the revenue page?
Yep, it's on here.
Yep,
10 through 14.
All right,
Let's see, any of my glasses on?
the revenue's on 3. Okay. I'd like to start with the revenue because I think it's gonna take a little longer. So just a quick history on myself. I've been doing this since 1998. I was part of the Union 29 people and then left for a while and came back. I've been back for 10 years. When we were the union, we had 4 or 5 budgets to do. And I want to say in all the years I've done this, and including all the union budgets that we had to do, this is the toughest one I've ever done. This has been a really hard budget year. And most of it is because of the revenue picture, as both Todd and Mary have spoken about. So I'd like to start at the top of the revenue section. At the very top, local revenue is the amount that each town must raise based on the EPS funding plan. So I'm on the first 3 lines on the revenue page.
Page 13.
Or it's just this revenue sheet in your packet. Might be a little easier to see.
Don't have that.
So we have to raise this amount of money in order to get our state subsidy. And I'll talk a little bit about the state subsidy when we get down to it. But the state sets a mill expectation. It is a factor in their formula that decides how much money each town has to raise. So for the FY25 budget, the mill expectation is 6.62. Last year, it was 6.97, which was higher, but because our valuation has gone up so much, even though the mill expectation is lower, we're required to raise more money. So this EPS funding formula is based on the main revenue service valuation. So that mill expectation of 6.2 is multiplied by the main revenue service valuation of each town, which did increase in this budget. McKinney Falls increased by $19,633,333. Minot increased by $17,466,666. And Poland increased by $103,550,000. So that brings the district-wide increase to $140,649,999. And that,
I'm sorry, I don't know where you're
I
at.
know, I will send you this because that's a lot of numbers.
It's not on this sheet though, right?
No,
Okay.
this is just.
Okay.
What was Mechanic Falls again? Mechanic
It's not
Falls,
on there.
19,633,333 was Mechanic Falls. Minus 17,466,666. Poland, 103,550,000. So the district-wide increase is 140,649,999.
And you're talking about the state valuation.
Yes, it is. Yep, the main revenue service state valuation. Yep, actually, Poland's increase is higher. The town's valuation is higher than the state's. So that resulted in us having to raise that additional 508,929 amount for local revenue when you compare FY '24 to '25.
And you do, Mike, you do have that number. She's talking about the local revenue number, the difference there. Very top row.
And this includes not only the reduction in revenue that you're seeing from subsidies and all of that, plus the new budget with the 7.05% increase.
Yeah, when I get to the bottom, it will all fall into place. Yep. The next section is the local only debt. This is the middle school edition that will not be paid off until FY '39. And it also includes the principal only of the revolving renovation fund. Now, we do have to vote on that revolving renovation fund. We will be having a informational meeting before our district budget meeting, and then it will be voted on at the budget validation referendum and the townwide voting when you vote in June. And the amount of that is in here is $8,378. So if that vote goes down, that amount will come out. But that will be for the next 5 years, and it is only principal payment. There's 0% interest on that revolving renovation fund. The local only debt and the additional local, which I will get to next, is the only section of the budget that is based on our funding formula, our cost sharing formula for the district, and that is 90% valuation and 10% enrollment. So it's only these next two, this section and the next one, that's based on that. All the other amounts are set by either the state or the miscellaneous.
And then when I talk to people in the community, they're often confused by that. They think that the 90-10, all of the revenue comes from that formula, but it's only our local part, and the state subsidy finds the state part of it.
Right, even the local amount that we have to raise, which was the first 3 lines we talked about, that is not subject to our cost sharing formula. That is set by the state. So yet we can't direct what town pays that. The state tells us that.
So you have a total by town of what each town's responsibility is?
We'll get to that. Yep. So the local only debt is up $2,721 budget to budget. And as you can see, Poland actually has to pay $5,300 more, and the other 2 towns have a reduction. And that's because the cost sharing formula shifted. And I will, when I do the additional local, I will get to those percentages. So the next section is the additional local funds. And this amount of money is, once we look at the expenditure budget and plug in all these other revenues that we know, this is the balance of money that is left over to support the expenditure budget. And this amount, again, is subject to the cost sharing formula. And so that's the amount you're seeing. That's up $2,534,654.
Is this also a state thing and not?
This is a local thing.
Just local?
Yeah. And this, the cost sharing shift. So Mechanic Falls for FY '25, their cost sharing percentage is 16.98. This is nowhere on your printouts if you want to write these down. Mine is 19.59. And Poland is 63.43. So this section of the budget, as well as the adult ed and the CIP, are the amounts subject to the cost sharing formula.
What was Mechanic Falls again?
Mechanic Falls is 16.98.
I'm just curious, how do we get those numbers? Can you give me like a very short, it's population, right, student?
This is the EPS funding formula.
Okay.
So I have a
Give me the
spreadsheet.
nugget of that.
Yeah,
What's the?
I have a spreadsheet in my computer where I plug in the valuation of each town
Okay.
and the enrollment.
Mhm.
And then I take 90% of the valuation and 10% of the enrollment,
Mhm.
and that gives me the numbers for
Okay.
the cost share. Yep. So then we get to the total local revenue, and that increase is $3,046,302, which is 25.34%. When we get to the next page and add in the CIP, then we can talk about what portion each town is paying for that, because I do have a total there.
If I may ask, you put a proposed revenue of 6.62 mil expectation. Is that all inclusive?
That's the amount the state sets. That's only for that top portion, the local revenue, that the state tells us we have to raise. So that brings us to the state revenue. This is solely based on the EPS funding formula from the state. And as you can see, we're getting $751,718 less. An important thing to keep in mind is we only get this money if we raise our required local, which is at the top, that $8.9 million. The amount of subsidy, so that 13 million, this is where that comes from. Again, you don't have that on your sheets if you'd like to write it down. This is the amount of money each town separately generates in state subsidy. So Mechanic Falls gets $4,811,106. Minot receives $3,644,822. And Poland receives $4,501,472. So I know that doesn't equal 13 million, it's 12.9 million. But we have an additional amount of money that we receive from the state for being part of what's called an educational service center, where we join forces with Auburn and Lewiston. Todd goes to those meetings, and by being part of that, we get an additional $92,000. So that's where that 13 million comes from. The other revenue section, we used to have tuition students, as Todd mentioned, we no longer have them. So we do have, I'm sorry, I need to go back to state revenue because I didn't do the last two. The state agency client is just the money that comes in from the state for services that students who are eligible for state agency client receive. Again, we don't have any control over that. The state just sends us the funds. Over the years, it has dwindled, and so we are bringing that down by 15,000 just to more accurately reflect what we are getting and what we have been getting. The National Board Certification is just teachers who qualify for that certification. We've had three for the last probably 4 years, and the state just sends us those funds. We in turn have to pay the teachers, so there is an amount in the expenditure budget also for that $9,000. The tuition, we no longer have tuition students, but in this section, we always gave you what the state average cost per pupil is and what we are spending as an RSU, because they're always very eye-opening. And so for 9 through 12 students, the state average is $13,300. RSU 16's cost per pupil is $11,998. So what that means is the state takes all the districts together and calculates what the average that those districts are spending on their students and gives the state average number. We've for years been below that.
Can you see those numbers again?
I can, yeah.
That was super interesting.
Yeah.
So the average,
For 9-12, high school students, it's 13,300 is the state average. And RSU 16 is 11,998. For K-8, statewide average is 11,466. and RSU 16 is 9,872. And so without the tuition students, we were able to charge the tuition students either the state average or our cost, whichever was less. So it was always our cost, but that's a loss of 23,000 in the next coming budget because we don't have those students. The interest income, I talked to the bank a couple of years ago because interest rates were going up and we were locked in at 0.5%. So we now have 4.6% that we're generating, and that is money, that is interest that we generate on our fund balance. So as we use our fund balance, that will decline, but we did have a healthy increase there because we have had a fund balance and we have generated a good amount of interest on that.
Like the towns, are you guys required to keep a certain amount in your fund balance?
It used to be 3% that schools could keep, and then when COVID hit, they went up to 9% for several years. That ends next year, but then it's going down to 5, not 3. Yeah, for our fund balance. So just throwing some more numbers at you, if you'd like to have them. After the allocation of the 1.5 million that we used for FY24, our audited fund balance, and we always have to go back to the audited fund balance. We cannot use any fund balance until after the auditors have completed an audit and given us the numbers. Our fund balance remains $1,744,473. The million that we're proposing for FY25 will leave us a fund balance, of course, of $744,473. This is only above 3% by $1,767. So as Todd mentioned, we're really getting down there in our remaining fund balance. And so that leaves the decrease of other revenue at $348,971. So what happens when you look at state revenue and other revenue and you see those large decreases that we're experiencing? All that money shifts back up to the local only in order to fund that full expenditure budget of the $29,329,077. And so looking at the second column there, it shows with the capital improvement request. Again, the request is 600,000, but we raised 200,000 last year. It's a $400,000 increase.
Sorry, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Because I'm new to this.
Yeah.
Audited fund balance, are you talking about the general fund?
Yes, the unallocated fund balance, yes.
Why is it, what does this mean here in the general fund increase?
The general fund is supporting the $29 million budget. The CIP is separate. It is a designated fund. But the calculation is separate for the increase because this needs to match this because this is the general. So we're looking at the total local revenue increase of 3 million. Put my glasses on.
That's not a balance.
That's the total local increase that we would have to ask for to support the general fund balance. So that's why that number matches on the right-hand column, the very top section, general fund increase. Because they're two separate budgets. Okay. And then the CIP is a designated fund that rolls over each year. And so calculating the $400,000 increase there brings the total increase for the local request. What you don't see is an increase ask for adult ed because we raised 130,000 last year. We're asking for 130 this year. So it's not an increase when you're comparing budget to budget. But say the increase was 150, you'd see you'd see a $20,000 increase to adult ed. Because when we ask the towns to give us the tax impact, it's based on what the increase is, so that we can tell people this is going to increase your tax bill. And so I do have those numbers for you also. So based on this increased ask of $3.4 million there at the very bottom, the increase to Poland's tax for 100,000 valuation would be, I'm giving you this number how many times, Todd, and now I can't find it on my sheet, $251. Mechanic Falls would be 205, and Minot would be 173. So if you have a $200,000 home, you'd have to double that, and a $150,000 home, just multiply by 1.5, just to give you a ballpark of what the increased ask right now, based on this budget as it stands, would be.
That was 251, 205, and 173.
Yes. I know that's a lot. The revenue budget is a lot, and it's very different. It's an expenditure budget's kind of easy to understand because, his salaries, this is what they are. The revenue budget has so many parts to it. And it's a lot of information. It's a lot of numbers because there's formulas for the state, there's formulas for us that those numbers are based on. So I know it's a lot.
And again, these increases are due to the cut in state funding because of our
Property valuations,
going up as much.
Yeah.
And we should say too, that because we're a school district, we can't change how this is, it has to be in these separate buckets. Like capital improvement has to be separate, adult ed has to be separate, because we can organize this in a bunch of different ways to make it make more sense for us, but this is not optional. We have to break it out this way.
How do the smaller classroom, other than obviously the salaries of having those extra teachers, but does that impact any of the subsidies and revenues that we're getting from the state?
It does. Yep. It figures into the funding formula. They have a ratio of what they say you should have. There are 8 different categories that are identified in the funding formula. We're over in 5 of them.
So, being a parent, I love the smaller classroom sizes, but also being on a select board and hearing from members of the community, I think people are struggling with, classroom, we're not gaining students, it's kind of remaining flat, if anything, tuition or people enrolling are dwindling, but yet we're keeping teachers and classroom sizes are getting smaller and therefore losing money, and so I think people are concerned about that. Like, how would you address that?
I feel like Sean pointed out today that his school increased in size significantly. So I don't know that holds true at every building.
He's still at 17 students per.
22, he said, in some of his
He said he
classrooms.
could get up to 22 with his classroom size, but they're at a 17 student average.
Average, yes, but I think just like the fact that like our population is not staying flat, at least not at that school,
It makes it difficult to look at like class sizes because that was one of the task force pieces is if we had done the 2-school model where we had a K2 school and a 3-6 school, then we could have some reduction in staff. But it makes it difficult because right now, like I'll take an example of like Minot School has, class size of first grade of 12 and 12. Beautiful class sizes, right? Like who would not want their child in a class size of 12? But if you remove one of those teachers, now it's a class size of 24. Because at Minot and even here at Elm Street, there's typically only 2 teachers per grade level. So that makes it really difficult to say we're gonna reduce classroom teachers. So then you have to start then peeling those layers outside, like who else provides instructional interventions or supports, and how do we make those cuts there so we can continue to maintain our class sizes.
Right. And of course, we've heard from some homeschooling parents as well that are like, hey, we're not sending our kids, but we're having to pay extra taxes too. And I know that those numbers increased substantially over COVID. You were gonna start reaching out to those. I think you had mentioned you were gonna try to reach out to some of those
I actually got some
families.
feedback.
Yeah,
Oh, she
I'm
had someone in the
interested,
area.
into hearing like, can we recover from that, or, are they interested in coming back? And
Well, if I may, the feedback I received is as long as there is a political agenda being pushed through the school system and it's not just basic math, reading, writing, and arithmetic, the particular families I talked to said their children will not be coming back to a public school ever.
What agenda are they talking about?
I know, right?
Well, that's.
Did I miss a memo?
Yeah.
Well, I think sometimes it gets that balance between like what's required by law. I start thinking about some of the requirements that we have for our LGBTQ+ kids that there are laws that we
Yeah,
have to
okay.
follow, where I think sometimes there's that perception out there that
Gotcha.
we're just kind of making things up. So I think there's that piece of how do you build that bridge between what's law, what do we require to follow, and then what the perception and understanding is out there.
And the other thing that I found is that thanks to COVID, there has developed a mistrust of anything governmental, period.
Yeah.
And so they feel they need to protect their children.
Kind of sounds like child abuse to me, but hey.
So it's not a matter of like parents feeling like the school's not able to meet the needs of their kids, it's more just personal or religious.
That would be
Personal
my, yeah,
preference.
that would be.
Yeah.
We talked about the immunizations too. They have to be immunized and stuff, and it's protect us that as well. So there's the number increase, and then I'm gonna just flip to the next slide, which Stacy already gave you this number, so you hopefully you have the same one, Stacy. Get back on the right
Now,
screen.
again, these numbers don't include anything to do with the, at all.
But they do include the CIP.
They do include the capital improvement plan. So those are the numbers, and here's, I believe those are the numbers you gave, right?
Yes.
So those are the tax impact. All right, you all set?
Do you want me to do the cost center? Because I skipped that.
Yeah, oops, you did, yeah, well, that's right, I skipped over that slide, go ahead, yep.
So this is the expenditure budget, and the cost centers that it is broken down into are how the state has us do our warrant articles. So the first one is regular instruction, that includes all the classrooms, summer school, GT, PLL, which is the English language learners. Got it, Mike? Okay. So that you can see is the increase there is $959,463. Just special ed, we have resource and self-contained rooms in all of the buildings, so you can see those locations. There is special ed transportation that's separate from regular transportation. So that might be field trips for them, or if they go, you know, we have special ed students that go to Special Olympics. That includes drivers, monitors, because a lot of the special ed transportation does have monitors.
I have a question, if I may, and again, I apologize. But I've been following our lovely legislature, and they've just passed legislation to get rid of CDF and put that burden on the school departments. Have you folks heard when you're going to be expected to take that up?
The special ed director said it would be about 2029 would be
So it's
the
not like
deadline
next
by
year?
which it had to, there's nothing
Okay.
in here that represents that.
I mean, there is some flexibility, I think, in that law if a district felt ready to do it before.
Yeah, there's even some funding that if we felt like next year would be the year we could apply for. But however, just the number one, the transportation costs of now putting 3 and 4 year olds on our buses that require now car seats, and then upgrading our facilities to have 3-year-old and 4-year-olds being able to be here when we already are at max capacity, gives us just a little bit more time to be able to be mindful and planful and intentional of how we're going to bring the 3 and 4 year olds.
I have no problem with it. I was just curious because of the lovely federal or state government mandating to us all the time.
Yes.
If they had given you guys an actual date.
Yes.
Can I ask a question about what's the extended school year?
That's summer school
Oh, okay.
for
Can't just
special
call
ed.
it what it is.
But it's special ed.
Right, special ed, it's because it's not necessarily summer school and that they're trying to make up credits or something, but that there are certain students that cannot miss school in the summertime. They do have to have that additional services, so.
It's part of their IEP plan.
Yeah, so it is extended school for them rather than summer school.
If we have like specific line item questions, should we ask those now or is there a?
I'm gonna go through the individual lines.
Okay.
She's giving you the
Sure.
20,000 foot view.
Other instruction, you can see that's field trips and academics and athletics. Student and staff support includes guidance, health services, library, those types of things. System administration is just the board of directors, the superintendent's office, and the business office. And then school administration are the administrators in their offices in buildings. Transportation is just one line by itself. Facilities and maintenance shows all of our buildings, including the central office. The SW stands for system-wide. And debt service, never talking about that. On the revenue budget, you can see it's just up that $2,721. And all other expenditures. So this is the contingency fund. As you can see, in the FY '24 budget, it was $969 million, $1,000. Whew.
Nice.
That was because none of the collective bargaining agreements or individual contracts had been settled when we had to finish putting the budget together. So the salary and benefit increases were all put under the contingency fund. For FY '25 proposed budget, it is $20,597. So Paula, going back to what you said about the state always mandating things and putting new things into place, there's a new law that starts January 1st, 2025, in that every employer in the state has to remit 1% of their payroll to the state to fund an expanded Maine paid federal leave fund.
Family leave.
Half a percent could be passed off to the employees.
I'm getting there.
You're right.
Okay.
Yes, but. So the law states that each employer has to remit that, but that they can charge half of that percent to the employees as a new payroll tax. So we did bring that to the board of directors at their meeting Monday night, and that is what they voted to do. So I did not have time to change this. So it will drop to about 10,000, drop by half when I make the change, but it is only for the people who are not in a collective bargaining agreement currently, and most of our employees are. So this only represents the administrators, bus drivers, because they're not in a collective bargaining agreement, adult ed, and of course, any substitutes we have or any coaches that are not teachers. You will see this number go up significantly as the other collective bargaining agreements expire. We will have to move those positions also into this 1% law.
When does that happen?
So the support staff has one more year on the contract, FY '26, it's done. And then the teachers are FY '27. And the support staff is food service, ed techs, secretaries, administrative assistants, custodians. Those are all positions that are in the current support collective bargaining agreement. When we first calculated this number and we had not been told that collective bargaining agreements won't be part of it, it was $189,000 that we had. It is a significant amount of money.
But that was the full 1%, correct?
Yes, and the state is going to generate millions and millions of dollars on this law.
You
That's
good?
where everybody keeps their mouth shut.
I wrote a letter months ago to the paper hoping people would be up in arms and they'd be contacting their representatives, but everything's been silent. So maybe in January when people start seeing it come out of their pay, we'll have something, but then it's gonna be too late.
All right, so you all set? Great. And again, Amy and Stacy, feel free to chime in at any time. What I'm gonna do now is take you through the, get my right document open. I'm gonna take you through the individual lines. I think that's what you're inquiring about. I've tried to go through and identify what I thought would be questions that you would have. I've identified, the administrators identified for us and shared it with us when they sat down. They all come in with their budget. We've asked them to explain any differences between $1,000, either increase or decrease. So, because that's usually what draws people's attention. And so we can explain those. I would rather not give you an answer than give you a wrong answer. So if you ask a question and I can't answer it, I will tell you. I'm assuming that probably Amy or Stacy could, but if they can't, then maybe some that John will answer this afternoon. I'm not gonna get into the operations. I will do it quickly, but he's gonna be talking about operations and CIP later, so. All right, so I'm gonna go through this pretty quickly. Stacy already alluded to, you're gonna see huge increases in things like salaries, stipends, benefits, because you're looking at a 2-year growth. it's a 2-year measure of increase, not a 1 year, because of the contingency money that was budgeted last year. They were not put into the lines where they are now. So when you look at those increases, you're gonna be, holy cow, why are we paying our staff so much? It's not the large increase from fiscal year 24 to 25, it's really from 23 to 25 because of that contingency fund. The slide up on the board right now shows you, this is just to maintain. And I have to go back and emphasize, we have nothing new in there. There's nothing new in the budget. This is just to keep what we have. And you can see the large chunk of change there. And as I said, I'll go through each cost center individually, but salaries and benefits, almost $1.2 million. Supplies, the cost of supplies is going up. I'm sure if you go out to shop now, you see it when you buy things. Our dues and fees, contractually obligated, along with the salaries. We have increases there. Those are going up. Software continues to increase, although 30,000, I wouldn't say is a huge amount, but it's to keep the stuff that we have. We need that. John will mention, I think he'll talk about or Stuart already mentioned about getting a new system. The system that the state provides for free for our buses, TransFinder, is not very good. It's good.
You get just what you pay for.
Well, it's free. So, we had built into the budget something like $90,000 to go to a different platform next year. We backed off. That was one of the removals. We backed that out because the state has agreed to go to another year of free TransFinder. However, we do need to begin the process of upgrading equipment because the year after that, it goes away. What the state is going to do is give districts, well, they're going to give you some amount of money. We don't know what the formula for that is. We don't know how much it will be, so that districts can then pursue their own form of transportation software and equipment. But I know that John and Stuart have had meetings. I know there's one in particular that they like, but we don't know how we can't build into the budget for down the road because we just don't know what the state's going to be giving us. But
And there is a
yeah.
long list of things that are not in the
Oh,
budget.
yes,
I know that you're going to
yes.
focus on that transportation software, but like later on after lunch on page 42, there's a very long list of other
Yeah.
things too. So
And
I just want
I'll
to make sure to
talk
balance
all
that
of
out
those.
as to, I
Yep.
know sometimes we spend too much time
Yep.
on one thing, our brain starts going there to want to support that, but there's an equal amount of conversation around all the other 38 items on that
It
list.
crosses the spectrum.
What's the percentage increase that you saw in raises for?
It's 5%, our teacher salary contract is 5%, 5%, and 5%. So for the next, the few contractors.
What's the teacher start at now in RSU 16?
41,000 or just under $41,000, because that is the state minimum. They do tell us how much we can, and they're looking at a $50,000.
I was gonna
I was
ask,
gonna
that
say,
was my
yeah.
next question. Did they pass that and has it gone, if it has, when did it go into effect?
They have not passed that yet. They're still working on that, the legislation around that.
Okay, so I'm gonna go through these. I'll bang through these lines pretty quick. If I skip over one or you have a question, just feel free to ask. I probably will not, as I just said, I won't focus on the salaries, the stipends, the benefits, dues and fees, those things, because they're contractual obligations that we have, and you can see the numbers on the board. So the cost center system administration starts on page 1, and that's the way I'll go right through them. So the board of directors, you can see that we do have an increase of $1,700. This is line 1.
So you're in the full financial.
I'm in the full financial, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Full financial, thank you.
Sideways on you.
So the first line there, you see board secretary salary. We have increased the need to provide, in that essence of transparency, we have increased the support that we need to provide. You saw JR in here this morning setting up for us, the need to provide audio video stuff. So that under that line is to cover that. The further down, you see purchased professional services. I'm talking at line 5 now. That's $1,500. That is an increase to our audit services. And Stacy kind of shakes her head about that one because it took them longer to do our audit for us than it ever has, which was frustrating to you, I believe. And the cost went up. So that is an increase in the audit cost. Our liability insurance, we have no control over that. And then the 500 dues and fees increase, that's for the Maine School Management and Maine School Board Association fees. So that's under system administration, that's board of directors. We move down to the superintendent's office. Obviously, I'm going to skip over salaries, benefits, retirements, things of that nature. We stayed pretty flat on a lot of things. Advertising, increased cost of advertising for our positions and things of that nature went up. And dues and fees, the membership rates have gone up, across the board. The business office,
We're asking questions during this, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just line by line.
Yeah, yeah.
I gotta jump back to the board secretary salary,
Yep.
number one. It looks like each time we've budgeted, our actual has always been under, so I'm just, what exactly are we increasing 1,700 if we've come under the last 2 years?
What wasn't in there was the recording, because we hadn't paid that before until this year, I think.
What do we pay exactly?
It's an hourly rate, so he submits every time he does the recording.
Bill.
Yeah.
JR?
and we have a new individual who's gonna be, has been training with it.
Yeah.
They'll be assuming that role moving forward.
And so that was never in the budget before. Was he doing it for free? Or-
Somebody was doing it for free, yes.
Okay, so now we're just looking to pay him for his time. Okay.
And when we're talking board, we're talking the school board?
School board, correct. All right, superintendent's office, I went through that one, business,
Support salaries, is that a person?
To
For the
the,
administrator?
it's a person and a half.
I was just curious why it was only 46 when it was budgeted 64 the last year.
So the 64 is the budget, the 46 is the year-to-date.
Oh, year-to-date.
Yes.
and that will continue to decrease as we go through. the
And
rest
so
of
it
the
was
year.
the year-to-date as of this printout, which was 325.
Okay, the business office, the only big jump you're gonna see there is under supplies. We need a new printer for our accounts payable. So that'll be a 1-year cost spike for that line, which is line 29. But we need a new printer for accounts payable.
Yeah, if I can just add, so Linda talked about contracts for the printers, which includes toner cartridges. It does not include toner cartridges for the payroll person or accounts payable, which is in this line, because we have to buy special microtoner printer that the banks can use. And the printers that we have on contract don't have that. So those two printers require special toner cartridges.
All right, so that would be the cost center for system administration. For school administration, starting on it's on page 2. You see the RSC salaries, benefits, professional credits, no changes there. The big decrease on a benefit is a change in a plan. That's when you see a big spike that one way or another, it's probably someone has left and someone else is coming with a different plan, so. But as far as PCS administration, there's really nothing there. Elm Street School Administration, again, contractual. Elm Street School. Contractual, you do see on line 53, general supplies is up $930. That is, a lot of that chunk is going to the bar model for supplies, the bar program that several of the administrators mentioned when they were speaking earlier. Again, dues and fees, contractual and increases. MCS administration. No real spikes there. I'm on page 3 now. Bruce William Middle School administration, again, same. That carries over.
Administrative salaries contractual?
Yes. Oh, what?
I mean, they're not teachers, so, a lot of the salary increases are for administrative staff at school.
But they already have a contract agreed to for next year.
Okay, they are contracted, okay, that was my question.
They're not part of a CDA, but they do negotiate and get contracts moving forward. Nothing over there. Administration under Colon Regional High School.
And they were also in the contingency line, even though they're not in
Oh.
the department, agreement, all the administrators, school staff, everyone was in that $929,000 contingency line.
And that takes us through school administration, which, as you can see, the vast majority of it is contractual. Regular instruction, page 4. Salaries, benefits, retirement. And PCS, go to page 5. CS K-2, again. Salaries and benefits, retirement. 5 and 6. PCS pre-K, again. You sound like a broken record. Page 6, Elm Street School, regular instruction. Obviously, an increase in, you see an increase there in substitute salaries. Our need for substitutes is increasing, and we just talked about a new EPL, and they afford people more opportunity to take time away. That's coming down the road, that will and could impact us and the support staff, the substitute salaries.
Well, it already has, because we have the 5 earned paid leave days
good
in
point.
our, that is required and as part of the contract. And then also then if someone's out, you have to provide the substitute teacher for that. And then we also do have an increase in our dues and fees that for the contract, our teachers can choose to attend conferences. And that means then we also are providing supports for that substitute teacher when they're out going to conferences.
Elm Street School K-2.
What page are we on? You lost me.
I'm sorry, page 7. Elm Street School K-2 line, I'm looking at line 144 is where it's starting. There's a little spike in 152 for instructional supplies. That's needed for some additional grade 2 classroom supplies because that class is a larger than normal band of students going through. So that's why there's almost $1,000 increase there in instructional supplies. Dues and fees of subscriptions increases.
I assume if there's been a decrease, then it's in parentheses, that's a decrease, and that means you don't plan on replacing that teacher?
No, just a change, and most of the times it's a change in their benefit package. So maybe they went from a single insurance plan to a family. Well, actually, that would be the opposite. They went from a family to a single, so there's that reduction.
Well, we have a veteran teacher retire after you've heard people say 20, 25, 30 years, and we bring in a first year teacher. Often they'll come in with a single plan and their salaries are much lower, so that's where you'll see some of those spikes. It's not, this isn't necessarily an elimination of a position or anything like that.
Okay.
Still on page 7, I'm looking at line 155, starting with the pre-K Elm Street School. Again, contractual. Page 8, minor, regular instruction. There's a big dip in the instructor supplies there. That's because materials were previously purchased for a spelling curriculum. They were purchased with fiscal year 24 funds so that they could be removed from the fiscal year 25 budget.
Actually, our spelling program is being paid for through a literacy grant that the state of Maine offered. And so that's how we're going to purchase our spelling program for next year and expand it to grade level 2.
Again, primarily dues, fees, salaries, benefits, retirements. Moving on to page 9.
What's an after-school teacher benefit? Line 205.
The after school.
Under Bruce, yeah.
Would you like to speak?
Yeah.
I'll let you talk about that.
So Sean is the only one that has that. He has some programs that he does after school. And as you can see, the year before it was only 2,700, depending on if they are going to have requests for that.
And part of that is, I'll just follow up, is they have an Excel program in which students stay after school, as well as they also provide supervision for our student athletes that maybe the practice doesn't start until 3 o'clock. So there's, that way they're supervised and on their best behavior and not going to Dunkin'.
In Whittier, they're not allowed to leave the campus and come back. They have to sit, they give them a classroom and they have to go sit in that room until their coaches arrive. So at the high school, it's completely different, but that age kids, they still need.
You understand, my youngest is 33. Things have changed a lot.
Yeah.
214 is educational software, again, those are increase in licenses. BrainPop, IXL, and Swiss. Currently, all these are currently things that we have. Instructional supplies, that line 216, that's just a uncontrolled increase in those expenses. On page 10, I'm looking at Fulham Regional High School now. You'll see a big jump in line 231 on the contracted services. There's a JMG program at the high school, and as we go through the process, we assume more ownership of that program, and this is the amount of ownership for fiscal year 25 to keep that program.
I'm gonna talk a little bit
You should
about
say what
what
that
the
is,
program is. It's Jobs for Maine.
It's jobs for Maine grads, yeah, I mean, as far as the curriculum, I don't know if I can speak directly to the curriculum.
Amy, is that something that you can talk a little bit about what that
Yeah.
offers our kids?
Yeah, so right now it's Tyler McGinnis is our JMG coordinator, and he takes kids through curriculum based upon whatever the current JMG focus is. So it's ever changing every year, and students can access that program. And then also too, they're looking at earning career exploration badges, and sometimes they can go out and have internships. Like we just had one, actually 2 PRHS students complete their internship in education at Pullman Community School, so they can earn badges and some money towards that. So it's a really comprehensive program that really looks at getting kids to think about their next steps for their careers. So.
Is that the same thing as the bus director was talking about him having an intern?
I don't think it's from JMG that I've heard of. I'm not sure where that intern is coming.
That intern's actually through adult ed.
Oh, perfect.
But we did have a couple of students come to the board and do a presentation a year or so ago, and they were obviously, this program was providing them a lot of support and inspiration in terms of their future. And it was talking about, a student was talking about taking over some management kinds, leadership opportunities at McDonald's. And it's certainly the kind of program that inspires kids to look towards their future.
And he has careers come in and speak to the kids. So that seems to be like maybe every other week there, and it's open to all students. So they can come in during their lunchtime or other blocks to be able to learn about potential careers and the paths to get there. So a really positive experience.
So does that intertwine with what the middle school does when they have their day? I take my goats and I go in and I make soap and lip balms and stuff with the kids.
Yeah, that's at the end, sort of the healthy day, the social emotional day at the end. Those are 2 separate pieces, but yeah, I would say that they tie in together, because we're really getting kids to think about their future and envision themselves in potential careers and hobbies that maybe they want to be able to explore.
We're into supplies. Those are just materials needed for those programs are broken down by individual programs at the high school. They would rotate through.
Now, what do you mean by wellness supplies? 239.
So wellness is a course at PRHS. So lots of times they go in there and they create their own personal fitness plans. They learn about tobacco use and drugs and alcohol. So it's kind of all of those pieces of being able to educate our kids on the wellness side, brain, healthy habits, how to deal with stress. So that's our wellness course.
Page 11, continues with Fulham High School regular instruction. Alternative ed. Again, all salary benefits, contractual obligations. Former school salaries and benefits. Page 12. you're probably starting to see how we said how much of the budget is tied up in contractual salaries and benefits. We haven't talked about a lot other than, there's not a lot other than that to talk about.
Todd, can I ask,
Yeah.
why are the gifted and talented teachers separated into separate lines?
That is because the state wants to track it by building. And so the 10 represents PCS, the 20 is Elm Street, the 30 is on it. So when the uploads go to the state, used to be, we did this paper report that was 20 pages long, and I had to put numbers in all these boxes. Years ago, the state made it easier for us, and that we just upload our figures. But at that point, we had to have codes that told them what those numbers represented.
So it's really only two people.
Yeah, yeah.
Broken out into all those lines, so that's good fun for Stacy.
Yeah.
And that brings us through that regular instruction cost center. We're going to student, staff, and support on page 13. And again, salaries, benefits, retirement. MCS guidance, same.
So just the Whittier guidance, Paul, as you were saying, there's these big negatives. That is a completely different person than was in the budget last year with a different salary and a different benefit package, and they happen to be less. So that's why you see those big reductions under Whittier Middle School guidance.
Okay. You read my mind.
That's page 13 and 14. Continuing through PRHS guidance,
You want to talk about this?
the
contract.
contract service, yep, I got it right here.
Yeah.
Yep, so the part-time substance abuse counselor has been removed from the contracted services. I should have said when I started.
Which line is
Oops, I'm sorry.
309.
309.
Yep. It appears again, because it's shared position between the middle school and high school. We also looked, in addition to, I talked about the things that we don't have, we also looked at positions that haven't been filled. We just haven't been able to fill them. And took those into consideration as well. Again, any positions, and as Amy said, we have this long list at the end. Just because we can't fill something doesn't mean we don't need it. It's just the bodies out there to put in positions, but it certainly doesn't mean just because we don't have someone there that we, as I said, we don't need it. But that is a position, as Stacy just said, it appears in two lines, 309 and 317. You'll also see a big jump right below that in 318 for $1,000. The high school needs to buy a fireproof file cabinet. Then obviously health are our nurses, and as Amy said, I think it was Amy that said earlier, we have nurses in all our buildings. And
Do we need nurses in all buildings?
Well, I hope I convinced you before. It sounds like maybe you still have a question, but the answer is yes. The medical complex needs of our students require us to have a nurse. It would be a very detriment to the health of our students if we did not have a nurse in every single building.
I have a question. Are we still keeping the district nurse, or is that going away because of the funds from COVID?
She's in the local budget right now, and that position is still in this local budget.
And is that still considered that now that you have a nurse in every school, that you need that other person to rotate?
Yeah, part of that is that like she's ultimately providing all of those district nurse responsibilities. Typically we offer a stipend when we didn't have the position before, but when we brought that on, it's the liaison, bringing in varnish clinics, eye appointments, screenings, but ultimately she serves basically as a substitute nurse. So whoever is out, she is either giving support in that building because of just the sheer number of students that come through. I mean, we're doing catheters for students, we're doing feeding tubes for students, in addition to all of the meds and other chronic illness plans from diabetes to asthma that our nurses serve. So yes, we have a nurse in every single building, and we still have the district nurse that oversees them.
And she's an RN, right? How many RNs do we have in the district?
We have 4 RNs, and 2 LPNs. One LPN's at Whittier and the other LPN is at Minot Consolidated School.
So if the others, the majority of the others are RNs, why do you feel you need a district nurse?
Our district nurse was brought in the budget a couple years ago, I think, 3 years ago, Stace? 2 or 3 years ago, in order to help provide the supervision and guidance needed to be able to manage all of the plans of our students, as well as to be able to provide who's gonna be where, when there needs to be coverage, and then also liaise between we have a district physician, making sure that we have all of our standing orders up, as well as attending medical 504 plans, and then also meeting with families to be able to address whatever medical needs are coming into our buildings and setting up all that communication.
Now, Mike, don't take this wrong, because my prior life, I was a lab technician who got a bachelor's, so that's why I'm asking these questions. The RNs in each school, why are not they overseeing this work for their particular building?
They do.
But, so then what's this district nurse's job?
To help support that, because it's just the workload, there's just not enough hours in the day to be able to service all of the kids and the plans and the families. And also being able to update all of the information in our technologies, where we store all of our records, our health records. So it's really an extra support of hands in order to be able to just accomplish the work of
Wouldn't it
the
be
nursing.
cheaper to hire a CNA with a med certificate
They're not licensed to do that.
to do some of the work, so that would free up the RN in the building to be able to do that other stuff?
That's not the structure we have right now, and I'm open to other thoughts and discussions, but right now we've got the 4 RNs and the 2 LPNs, and we haven't explored changing that at this time.
Thank you. And if I sound grumpy, I'm really not.
I know, Paula. I got you. I got your vibe. You're asking good questions.
So through health services, we get into instructional technology on line 15, or page 15, excuse me. I will jump down to line 346, the contracted services. I believe Linda mentioned that getting the assessment done for the network, there was no cost for that, it was free. So that's why there's a big reduction there. The software maintenance contracts is a decrease. She indicated that's been relocated to a different budget line. The big jump in the software programs and subscriptions is for our Incident IQ and our frontline software again. Software is the platforms that we currently have. Line 354 will be coming out of the budget when we had that discussion, and Stacey had already printed off, so we didn't want to waste all the paper and print those things off, but that line will be being removed.
Well, it's not being
It's
moved
not
totally.
totally.
30,000 will be coming up.
Yep.
Todd, in some of our subcommittee meetings, we've talked about the security systems and the software and the cameras and all that, so that sounds like technology stuff to me. Is that in the CIP or is that in here somewhere?
It's not in here.
Okay.
Or it's not in at all, or
I
it's.
thought I saw something.
Might be, there's some
I just
safety
remember
stuff in
Linda
it.
was the
What
one
you're
that was
talking about is
quoting
the improvement, right? I think is what you were asking about.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
Okay.
Now, John, I'd have to look at the CIP. I don't recall seeing that. Off the top of my head. It could be in there.
Why is 30,000 coming out of, sorry.
It's gonna be picked up, in ESSER, the remaining some of the missing ESSER funds.
You want to start the one?
I was gonna try to get through this. I'm almost at the other instructions, so if I get through this one. Federal systems, the software below that 17,778 is Sophos software that's currently in the grant. That's managed detection, Microsoft updates, things of that nature. The security that you mentioned.
That client-based software, it has to be installed on every device for it to.
Yes, I believe it does. Stipends are contractual, as you see, improvement of instruction.
Oh, can I ask why, that line 358 is a huge difference. What stipend is that? Because that's a significant amount of money.
Those are all stipends that were added to the budget, new type stipends like longevity stipends, retirement stipends were added to the contracts after the budget was put together last year.
But they are all part of the contracts.
The CBA,
Right.
yeah.
If I may, why are we paying somebody $148,000 to be an instructional coach?
That's actually two people. And we have a literacy coach and instructional coach with a focus on technology. So that one actually is two salaries.
And can I go back to the stipends? Is that part of the school board's job to work and create those collective bargaining? Or who's managing those with these particular groups? Is it just the administrative team or is the school board part of those?
It's school board, but I mean, it's a team of which, there are school board members on that team, administrators on that team, and work with the associations. And, I will say we took a good part of a year to work through the contracts that you're now seeing those increases within here. But yes, it is a school board responsibility with a team. And that team being administrators, school board, and associations.
I know I've said this before, that, those numbers never go back to the specific towns to get voted on in regards to what that salary is gonna look like, what these additional pieces are, because there's obviously some significant increases. 5% each year over 3 years is a significant amount of increase for salaries when most rates for other businesses are 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And I know it goes back to our teachers don't make as much money, but still, we say that every collective bargaining season that at some point we're going to get there, and it's just 5% each year is I think a lot. And
And I don't disagree with you, but when the things that we look at when we're negotiating with our teachers is what's given in contracts around us regionally, and then one of our goals has been that we have a salary schedule that's going to attract and that we're going to be able to retain good people. We don't try to compete with Falmouth and Cumberland and Cape Elizabeth, but we'd like to be in the ballpark with those people that are Oxford Hills, Granite Gloucester, Lake Region, those places that touch us. We'd like to be at least in the ballpark. And we're in the ballpark, but we're not far into it. So those are the kind of things that we're looking at when we look at salary increases. The other thing that we look at is we want RSU 16 to be a place that culturally teachers feel that they're valued and that we want people to stay with us. We heard some of our administrators this morning talking about how important it is that we have consistency, both in administration and in our staff. And those are some of the other considerations. And so we did put not a large amount, but a small amount into our contracts. It's a longevity to say to people at certain points in their career, thank you for staying with us, that we appreciate that consistency. So that's the other thing between just the salary for the position is to try to find some small ways to say to people, we appreciate you, and that we appreciate that you're staying with us. So those are the things that we think about when we're sitting down to do that. And it took us a good year to work through that.
So are these stipends just specific for longevity, or are they for continuing education, or there must be a list for this amount of money?
There is a list on our website. I'm not sure if you have access, but you can go to rsu16.org and you can look at the contract. And at the end is all of our stipends from math team, all of the kind of the clubs that are offered after school. So stipends are paid for in addition to their contracted out.
Yeah, I understand that. In sports, there's stipends.
Yeah, yeah.
But
yeah.
are there also stipends for like if somebody goes and continues their education? Or-
That's in a different line. If you look down there on the professional courses for teachers, that's where our contract, we have, by contract, we set aside 70,000 for our teachers our teachers to access for those credit courses. And
So
then
you pay for those?
we do pay for those. And then we also have a payback clause. So if you leave the district within 2 years, you do need to pay us back.
Can you give like a range of the stipend amounts? They range, like what's the least expensive, like $500 if you do a club, and then up to a certain amount, because we have 350 employees. I mean, it's a big number, but we have a lot of people and there's a lot of stipends, but they're smaller amounts.
Probably like our largest stipend is the Dean of Students stipend, and that's, I think, $5,100 days, or $5,300.
$5,150.
Okay, and then our smallest stipend is our, maybe our college school overnight, which is at $250. And a typical stipend is probably $1,500 for serving on like a leadership team.
For a year.
For a year, that meets weekly or every other week would be another average one. After school clubs can range anywhere from $800 to $1,200, and you offer that for 12 weeks, meeting every week or meeting twice a week with students after school. I think would be a good range of sampling.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, the Dean of Students is a stipend position. I thought that was similar to like an assistant principal. Is that a teacher in a classroom?
It is, no, the Dean of Students is the Dean of Students position. We've got we have a Dean of Students at MCS and we have a Dean of Students at Whittier. And so we do give them the $5,000 stipend because they are acting as an assistant principal. However, they're not an assistant principal. So the amount of after-school meetings or even before school meetings that they're required to attend warrants that $5,000. So then we're not paying them additionally to be part of the leadership team and part of all of the other meetings that other teachers get paid, so they don't access those contractual stipends if they're the Dean of Students.
But they're paid under
They're
the
paid a
teacher's
teacher's
salary.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
All right, I'm looking at the clock, but I don't want to go too fast. I would like to get through this cost center, but if we have to stop, we can. I'm looking at line 370, you see reductions 370 and 372, those are being relocated into title funds. Dues and fees is a big one there, that's contractual and current programming cost increases. You see more salaries and benefits throughout there, salaries and benefits for the library. I'm looking at the libraries now.
Oh, the zeros are nice.
It's been painful though.
Yeah. I'm all the way down to line 418, that's educational software and ebooks, that's an increase in cost of subscription services, digital services and database. Those costs continue to go up. And then the assessment 422, that's bringing it more into alignment with actual spending. And you're gonna hear John talk a lot about that when he speaks, that some of his increases is too, because what we have budgeted is not what we've spent. So that these numbers bring it up to what the actual cost would be. And that will bring us to other instruction, and I would say that we stop there and eat lunch, and you guys can go back and look, and if you have questions, feel free to ask.
Where's the bathroom again? I'll show you, I'm headed that way.
Just out around the corner.
Outside, that would be easier.